St. Lucia. Those of you who are viewing with us online, welcome back again. And of course, that would be via the HD's online viewing platform. That would be their YouTube page and also Facebook. So if you're joining us via that means, we welcome you to day 2, the final day of the Unconference. Again, my name is Marina Alexander. Honored to be part of this and honored to be your mistress of ceremony. We are going to be taking off again. To those of you who just joined me at the zoo, it was a beautiful run, isn't it? Who came from the zoo with me? I will know, I just have to watch and see who breathing heavy. Like me. I just had to do that and see who struggling to breathe, like myself. And I know, all right. It was beautiful. As a matter of fact, look at this. Anybody knows what this is? Not those who just come. Quail egg. What is good for? You know? You don't? Google it now? Google it and tell me. Right. Give me the, all right. Awesome. Good. Google, you go tell me what afterwards, right? Because I know either. Don't figure it, no, I know. I just pick it up because I keep hearing so much about the quail egg. And I've been told that there's a lot of properties. Lee, you want to take this for me? Thank you very much. Okay, guys, can we call to order, please, so we can get the ball rolling? We've got our first balcony chat coming up in a minute. Let me highlight the sponsors before I bring Kathleen on. The sponsors, again, include Island Fund for Climate and Justice, Caribbean Feminist Climate Justice Movement. The gold sponsors include Lucelec, World Food Program, the St. Lucia Bureau of Standard, Massey Stores, NIC, the National Insurance Corporation. They're back with us again. And, it's vital that you visit their booths. There's a lot of information, a lot that you need to know that, you need to just have a little chat, a little conversation with the NIC, and then you'll figure out a lot of things that you should know, right? ICA is also here, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. And we also have our silver sponsors, which includes the French Embassy, Caribbean Climate Justice Project, Regulated Substances Authority, Invest St. Lucia, Sagico, and Renick St. Lucia. The bronze sponsors include Energize Holdings, Inc., St. Lucia Chamber of Commerce, Fix, WSC, and we've got supporters in the form of the Golden Eggs Farms, supporting our petting zoo, Digicel, thanks for the text blast, and Ali, get your discount 10% with Helen's Daughters. So these are just a few of the official sponsors, and to anybody else who made contribution, who's making contributions towards this event success, we appreciate you. So to get things rolling, of course, we might have some new faces amongst us, and we'd like to take the opportunity to welcome you if this is your first day attending the Unconference. So that would mean you did not hear from the founder, and it is vital that we do that. So we're going to bring back Kathleen again. Please welcome Kathleen to do a soft opening again, especially for those of you who this is your first time.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Again, we were very worried. It's a Sunday. We didn't know who would turn up. Yesterday, I think we had close to 300 persons come in. So amazing. Showing up for agriculture. We're very excited about that. Today, again, we have some showers of blessings. But again, we have taken over the property. Make it your own. It is your community. And for those who were not there yesterday, I just want to say welcome to the Unconference on Agriculture. Whether you are also joining online, hello. And we just want to remind you that agriculture is not just farming, and this forum is going to show that agriculture is our food, it's our culture, and it is our freedom. And yes, as true Caribbean people, it is also a festival. It's what brings us together, it's what feeds families, it's what roots us, and most importantly, it's what keeps us dancing even after the hard days. So yesterday, we planted some initial seeds of connection, seeds of ideas, and seeds of possibility, and today we are going to water them, which is why the rain came. So here's the heart of it. Alone, we realize that we cannot do this together. We want to come together as a community because we need to build a movement. We need to have a unified voice. Together, we are stronger. Together, we can create the kind of agriculture sector that isn't scattered with many voices, but united in one big chorus. So this Unconference is about community. It's about collectivism. And it's about choosing community over competition. As you know, the saying goes, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. So as you step into today's sessions, do it with energy, do it with openness, do it knowing that this is not just another meeting, it's a journey. A journey that will return every 2 years, bigger and brighter because of you. So let's make day 2 even better than day 1. Let's connect, let's laugh, let's challenge each other, and let's keep proving that agriculture in the Caribbean is alive, it's powerful, and it's worth celebrating. So, welcome to the Unconference. Have fun, bring the good vibes, and most importantly, remember, don't leave too early because we do have a performance by Umpa to close out the weekend. So thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you so much, Kiflin, and we are so honored to be here again. Well, we're getting right into it. We closed off yesterday, the balcony chat, the last one we had yesterday was food as medicine. Well, we're kicking off this morning because this is a vital topic, and you will very well appreciate we need all the conversation that needs to be had on that. And I know a lot of you will be very excited because to hit off this chat, we've got the Right Honorable himself, Priest Kailash, from the Mount Kailash. Priest, are you there? You can get Mike, Priest up, please, and let him join me. Well, he's there. Wonderful. Come through. Let's welcome Honorable Priest Kailash, ladies and gentlemen. You can have a seat anywhere. Yeah, right there. And of course, it's Rahim's turn to lead that conversation. So let's welcome the moderator once again. Rahim, it's up to you, darling.
Good morning, everyone. Is it the rain or y'all just not telling me good morning back? That's better. I could never be a pastor or priest, because this begging people to respond and thing in congregation wouldn't go too well with me. Anyway, we ended yesterday on sustenance, as Maureen mentioned, and we're going to continue on that. So, put your hands together for my guest this morning, the Right Honorable Priest Kailash Leos. Priest, I must admit though, I didn't know you had a surname, I thought it was just the Right Honorable Priest Kailash. I didn't know about the Leos. So you learn new things every day. But Priest, tell the audience from the onset about Rastafarianism's own focus on the concept of levity. Levity as being natural, whether it be for the diet, whether it be for just the way of living. Give the audience a sense of that concept in its most basic and original sense.
Yes, give thanks. Give thanks, my brother. Give thanks to Helen Daughters for putting this event together. Give thanks for all the people who took the time out to come and sit down with us. The Rastafari levity is not something that is estranged from what our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers used to do. What the Rastafari really came with was they actually what we call the revolutionary people, the extremists who actually took it to the level where they were in tune with nature. But growing up with my grandmother, being in nature, going to the river, going into the rainforest, hunting for birds, looking for quibish, crayfish, eels, so all these things that we did naturally where we connected with nature. This is what really the extreme level of Rastafari really teach people. Being at one with your community, being at one with the land, being at one with the place that you were raised up, and even having that kind of responsibility to safeguard that space. So if you growing up, we always had a little garden. Everybody always had to plant something, so we always used to safeguard exactly what we had.
Thank you very much for that, Priest. By the way, audience, we're going to keep the same format such that somewhere along the way we will come to you for your questions and comments. And the same rule from yesterday applies with the brevity of your contributions. So, Priest, tell us about the idea, as you said, of the ITAL diet and levity being seen as preventative health, as opposed to what we discussed all of yesterday being sort of using pills to cure the ills. How does the diet and the food as medicine sort of help address the root causes of diseases?
Well, I mean, we don't even use the word diet, So healing begins from the mind. It's a concept. Many people are Christians. When Jesus came, he never healed nobody with no bush tea. He said, your faith has made you whole. So somebody had to believe and stretch their hands or believe or go in the water, have that kind of mental aptitude, that kind of clarity in the mind of exactly what they want to consume. So we eat words all the time. So when you say diet, then you get sick, you get diseased. This is, not at ease. Then you go to the doctor and they give you a pill, people ill. And then you still come and eat a meal. Right? So it is all these simple things, words, all these things that carry energy, carry a frequency, a vibration. So if I just come and start shouting loud and cursing bad words, people would feel uncomfortable. But if I come and I say love, peace, harmony, tranquility, kindness, it brings a particular type of frequency. So even before we go into the food, your state of consciousness is what would ultimately decide what's in your plate. So because you care for yourself and you care for others and you know exactly what you're going to, when they say food is medicine, the definition of food is a substance that is therapeutic and life-enhancing. If something is therapeutic, that means that it heals. If it's life-enhancing, that means that it'll give you longevity. So, I mean, in ancient times, when the British used to sail the Caribbean, they used to have 80% mortality rate in the sailors. So if a ship came from Bristol in England, coming to St. Lucia or Jamaica, and you had 100 sailors, by the time that they came into the ports of St. Lucia, they would have about, how many? 20 sailors. 80 sailors would die as a consequence of vitamin C deficiency. Right? What do they call vitamin C deficiency? Scurvy. So you're telling me that the name of the British would change to limeys when they realized that by consuming lime along the journey, they will have almost 100% survival in that journey. So sucking on a lime can save your life. Right? So food is medicine in the definition, but in the reality, many of the diseases people always say, oh, diabetes is a lifestyle disease. Hypertension is a lifestyle disease. Cancer is lifestyle diseases. So people just not at ease because of their lifestyle. So when you begin to work on the mind, then the clarity of thought and the beautiful thoughts and all these things then will bring you to the state whereby you would not just love fish to see the fish in your plate. Right? You love fish. Because you would consider if you put gromoxin in the soil, it will go in the oceans. You understand? So, I mean, it's critical that we don't just isolate it. Everything has to be in a unison.
Thank you very much for that, priest. Now, you often speak about the body, and you mentioned it a while ago, even if not using these words, as being a temple. Tell us a bit about that connection between spiritual health and the consumption of food on an everyday basis. Make that connection for us.
Well, give thanks. We have a school called the Mount Kailash School of Esoteric Herbal Knowledge, which basically is a school that actually combines, the knowledge of medical school, the embryology, anatomy, physiology, with the knowledge of the ancestors, the herbs that our ancestors use in healing, and also specifically contemporary ethnobotany and these things. And when we look at the physical structure, we won't call it a body. You say, hey, look at body there. It means, if you say, oh, look at body there, body, if you say, look at body there, what you're saying, you're seeing something that's dead. Right? So we don't even use that term, a body. We say a physical structure. So a person has an outer shell, which is the physical self, which is just a physical manifestation. You could touch, you could feel, you could smell. But then that same person, they have emotions. That person could be happy, they could be sad, they could be angry. You cannot touch anger, you cannot touch the happiness, but it's still a state of being. So that person still has what you call an emotional self. Then the same individual have what you call an effort, an energy field. If there is a diabetic who has an amputation, up to 3 months after the leg has been removed, the big toe would still be itching. It's called the phantom theory. So even if the physical leg is absent, the energy of that leg is still in existence. So if I get up from the chair, and you have an instrument who could measure heat signature and all these different things, you'll see a shape of me still here. So that's what you call your vibrational frequency. That's why I say, oh, because I say when I go around that, man, I'm going to have bad vibes, bad energy. So people also have a soul. You have a soul, an entity that is personally of yours that's connected to the divine. And still you're a spiritual being. And still you're a star. As above, so below. So you are an astral being. And still you are a god or a goddess. You are a creator. You can create. So if it is that you don't observe yourself on these higher levels, and you only deal with symptoms. So my blood pressure is high, so you drink a pill. You drink a pill every single day for your blood pressure. And your pressure is still high. You take the same insulin for diabetes every day. You still get glaucoma, you still die. You never sit down and check your spirit. Ask yourself a question. What am I doing that every single day? It's like you go to the mechanic and your car has a leak in the engine and the mechanic puts some chewing gum on it. And every day you have to go back and get a piece of chewing gum to stick on it just so you could roll your car. So your physical structure that's supposed to be more precious to you. If it is you go to someone who tell you they're going to give you that to deal with that, and you're doing that for 15 years and you still have the same disease, that's what they call insanity. When you repeat the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So you're not just a physical entity. So you have to feed your emotions. You have to cultivate emotions of positivity, of happiness, joy, tranquility. You still have an energy. So you're supposed to safeguard your environment. Know who you allow to come into your space. Know how long you're an average of the 7 people you spend the most time with. So your grandmother always says, show me your company and I'll show you who you are. Right? So if you're an Adventist, if you're a Catholic, if you're a Hindu, if you're a Rastafari, engage in spiritual activity that will connect you to the divine. No matter what you are, no matter if you're Adventist or Catholic, just take your losti, say your rosaries. Say, Hail Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners. No, that's good. It's good words you're repeating. That's the point of it. So it's not the religion, it's what it teaches us, the goodness. So when you do that, you cultivate a part of yourself that not food cannot only touch. Right? And because you know that you are a creator, then you begin to take more responsibility for your actions. You say, boy, I leave that in the hands of Jesus, boy. So if we have 10 people who come to us because they have cancer or some type of thing, the people who leave it in the hands of Jesus or Buddha or Allah, they don't make it. Because God don't want you to be sick. No, he said he'd rather the sinner come to repentance than perish. So he wants you to be well. So it's the choices that you make. Begin to take responsibility. And look at yourself, not just as teeth and mouth and tongue and ears, but as all these other 6 levels of existence. So control your emotion. Control your energy. Feed your soul. Nourish your spirit. Check the heavens. There are people they call lunatics, You know what a lunatic is? A lunatic is somebody who's affected by the moon. So when the moon gets full, boy, with that man guy going off because you understand? Because the stars and the moon, these things affect you. So overstand your relationship with that. Give thanks.
Priest, tell us about, and I guess a lot of what you're talking about is part of your Rejuvenation Center. Tell the audience, for those who wouldn't know about the Rejuvenation Center, what it entails, without obviously giving them too much information so that they would come.
So you tell me I'm going too long?
No, I'm telling you, check for your bread.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, knowledge is, is free. It's real free, so we don't have no secret ingredients. So it makes no sense keeping the knowledge from someone. Say, okay, so that herb there is very good for, it regulates your blood pressure, you could use that, man. Yeah, there's nothing, you lose nothing from that. Because you'll still get 99% of the people still who will go and get the herb. So you could still do your capsules, your things, and you could still sell. The Mohan Kailash Rejuvenation Center came out of a feeling of, like, when you go to a hospital, that there's a place called ICU, ICU? Yeah. ICU is where I will not see you. So when you are in the I will not see you, you lying down and and you have 3 people in a line, and you in that space, you in that energy field, and then you see they come and they wrap somebody up, and you lying right there, Yeah, I will not see you.
Priest, you saw that in a movie or something?
A movie?
Or you see that live and direct?
Remember, I go through these things,
Okay.
I went through the training of conventional medicine. So when it is that when they take off that person and you're right there, what's on your mind? Am I next? Right? So if you have a space where you see people die, you see people sick, you see suffering, is that the best place for you to be to heal? No. So the Mount Kailash Rejuvenation Center came out of that as a means of revolutionizing the healthcare system. We actually began our work in 2006 in St. Lucia, when St. Lucia was designated #1 in the world with diabetes. And then the World Health Organization said, well, in a decade, there'll be a 50% increase in the number of people. At that time, I was in Antigua, so I left Antigua, I came to St. Lucia, and I began what we call Wellness Day. And we did Wellness Day 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Then St. Lucia, SLHT, I think, one of these people take it. Right? They take the concept and then they invite me to have a booth. So, I wrote them a very articulate, I got advice from Mr. English there now. But I wrote them a very beautiful email. And what they did never actually prospered. You see, as you see our sister here, Sister Kiflin, what she's doing for farming. Somebody will come and they'll take the same concept, and instead of supporting it or carrying it, they'll come and then you give it a different spin, and then the same people that you use, they'll use the same people and everything, and then they'll tell you, come and take a booth. So we came into St. Lucia, we had inter-secondary school vegan cooking competitions. We went into all the secondary schools. We taught the children how to cook. We had the wellness fair. We brought in foreigners. We had a show on television. It wasn't telling lie in the vision. Right? But we had, to really our journey, I would like to just commend Dr. Gilbert for St. Rose, if she's still there.
Let's put our hands together for Dr. St. Rose.
And also Brother McDowell. When I came into St. Lucia, these were the people who really were speaking about wellness. But when I came in, I was the madman. So I was the Obia man, the madman. Yeah. I can be an Obia man, and just disappear. What? Power. Right, but yeah, so our journey took us from seeing that our people was in that state where we were investing. We were paying $8,000 a month to be on TV, So most times when people say, oh, Priest Kailash, I've had it, what is it for that? What is it for that? And they say, but Priest Kailash, why are you giving all that information free on TV? We used to be paid $8,000 to these TV stations per month to give us free information. So we literally, our work within the past 20 years? It's about 20 years, 2 decades. 2 decades of work. And if you go in any of these books and look at where St. Lucia is rated with diabetes, St. Lucia is not in the top 10, not in the top 20. When they prophesy that we would have 50% increase, everybody would have diabetes. But when people understand that the food around them, the herbs that they walk on and they pee on and they think on and all these different things. You know, the people used to be afraid of herbs. When I began this, I'm telling you, you know, people used to be of 2007, 8, 9, 10, people used to be afraid of saying that they're drinking bush tea. I'm telling you, you know. So it took time and energy to bring forth that concept of accountability, bring people forward to their roots, ensuring that they understand that what their grandmother used to do actually works. My first product was what we call a free up laxative, which is just senna, ginger, castor oils, flax seeds. If not flax seeds, we have what, chia seeds, neem, coconut oil, toile wheel. Where did we hear that from? From our grandmother. It's something my grandmother used to give me. I bottled it. And I sold it. They were Priscilla is a millionaire, you know. If I am a millionaire, well, I mean, money grows on trees. So money do grow on trees. Money grows on trees. The leaves of all the plants that you have around you is money. When you add that level of value to it, then you'll be able to respect it. You won't just go and spray oxygen around the place. You would say, oh, Munya Shapantila, oh, Japana, Zebazedri. What else? Zebapik, Ganabafei, Zepina. You know? So all these things that we are running away from. So when I hear people say, well, we have no resources. The nutraceutical industry is like come on. They say that it's hundreds of billions of dollars, but it's trillions of dollars. Nutraceuticals. You know, remember marijuana is just one herb, you know. Right? So I make more money off feuille du vent, Petit Frère Alicia than I make off ganja, you know. I make more money than Petit Frère Alicia, feuille du vent, than I make from marijuana. So when you begin to understand that, what your ancestors taught you, then you could package it. So I'm sitting down in medical school, I'm listening to pharmacology, and I'm saying, well, lisinopril is not good for people of African descent because they have high levels of, you know, it works on a system called a renin and angiotensin system. Now, people over 60 have a lower levels, and people of African descent have a lower level. So drugs like lisinopril don't really work for people like yourself, and you know. So, and then when you go see the same drugs, they are prescribing it to our same people. When you go to school and you study and they tell you, well, it's not effective for people of over that age and that age, and you go to school and say they're taking the same drugs. Just like you go to school, remember you pay hundreds of millions, thousands of dollars to go to school. And the professor tells you that 80% of people of African descent, Indians, are what? Lactose intolerant. You're not supposed to drink dairy, cow's milk. Yet still, everyone here drinking cow's milk. All right. That's a very good no. That's a good no. All right, so the fact that you are not drinking it serves testimony that you are in a good place. When you go to Jamaica and these countries there, you still see everybody with aluminum pots and, The things that St. Lucians would not use, like aluminum foil and a grill and many things people don't use, people still use it around the world. So value where you are. Embrace your heritage. So Mon Kailash Rejuvenation Center is revolutionizing the healthcare system. So when you're there, you have fresh air, you have birds, you have a river, you have things. I could just walk outside, get some seasoning pepper, get some chives, get some things, pong something in a pilon, and give you you understand? So it is a way of healing that actually considers the individual. So it is patient-oriented and result-driven. So there are people that terminally ill with cancer that you just cannot, some people come and like they're dying, like they're dying. Like, okay, they're dying, like my priest I go everywhere already. I go Martinique. It's like, if you're looking for a husband, and then the husband says, oh, I had Jennifer, I had Jill, then Jenny, I was with, Sharika, I was with, and then you are my final option. How would you feel? So people normally come to us like that. Say, priest, I have been to there, and to France, doctor eats all my money, and now I come to you. So, like I said, look at that. People, they're saying all these things, not overstanding that. Okay, well, so. Well, I would say you save the best for last, right?
All right.
But at the end of the day, you have to understand that healing, when you're not well today,
Hold it at the top.
when you're not well, Rastafari. Yeah. We fight against not flesh and blood,
Principalities.
but principalities in high and low places. Yeah, so what was I saying? Remember?
Last option. When you're not well, they come to you as the last option.
Last
Save the best
option.
for last, yes.
If it is that you
Talk. Take this one, try this one. I don't know what's going on there.
No, I still have one. No, you should give me that other one. Rastafari, give thanks, give thanks, give thanks. Love, love, love. It's all right.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Yes. This is me. I'm electric. Yes, all right. Give thanks. So, they come to you like like as if you want a miracle. And miracles do happen, eh? Yeah. You see that? That's a miracle. Yeah. So miracles do happen. But you have to be in the right state of mind. Healing, when your grandmother said to drink 5 soursop leaf every night, FTA Zoa, take off the center vein, and to drink that nightly. That's what you call micro dosage. So you're not waiting until you're sick. No, so you'll be drinking your little soursop leaf tea every night. Now you want to drink Milo. Hulo? Right? Then you abandon all the culture that was consistent healing. The longette was consistent healing. The ditekako. Huh? So now they say, oh, cocoa has theobromine and it helps your stem cells to regenerate and helps to build back up the heart and all these things. Cocoa tea was something we grew up with as a culture. And not with milk, Without milk. Because milk and cocoa don't really match. When you put milk in cocoa, it prevents the digestion of it properly. Right? So you could use let cocoa. Right? But not dairy. So our cultures, take healing as a process. Give yourself 3 months. Give yourselves a year. Give yourself 5 years. Give yourself a decade. Don't just work at, okay, well, I want to get well now. So if you have high blood pressure, say, boy, in the next 6 months, I'm working on myself. So then you set things and you pace yourself, start to exercise, change your diet, think positive. And after 6 months, if you continue, you must get positive results. Right? So I have a theory called the fruit tree theory. Plant it today, nurture it, and 5 years you will eat fruit. Just like the next election. Election now, 5 years election.
Priest, I will open you to the floor. I know that you have many burning questions, and just like yesterday, I'll get my 1,000 steps in, but today I will hold the mic while you ask the questions. Because I did some reflection last night, and I know... Ochi, all right. So, you could come closer to me to be able to ask your questions or share your comments. And we will limit it, as we normally do, to 30 seconds. Just like when you call the radio programs. Just that your money is finished, so let's be shorter.
Good morning to everyone. Morning, Prince.
Blessed. Give thanks.
Proud client, I should say.
Give thanks.
But not as often as I should be. So I am speaking in the capacity of a social development specialist. And one of the areas that I work on for policy and strategies and programs is livelihood strategies. And two things I am concerned about. One, we keep telling people that we are not resource poor, we have everything. However, to build a mindset to get people in a place to embrace that will take some kind of training, what we call social engineering. I know you are but one, but what opportunities do you think we have where we could partner and we could work to cultivate that culture? Do you have any plans, or are you seeing any other persons we could partner with to achieve that? Okay, so that's one. And two, if we are going to get people to use our resources, I notice that they always come up with the question of how much, like we know the dosage, the 5 leaves. And I know you've been hearing about oil of oregano, and then there are some other oils, the extracting of the oils from those things. And we are ordering the oils on Amazon and bringing them here. We have a TVET program, we have the promotion of TVET. I don't know what are the opportunities to get people the equipment and the skill to be able to extract the oils, whether you are familiar with any of those opportunities.
Well,
thank you very much.
Give thanks. Well, I partner with, we've done some work together with Helen Daughters. You know, we work with churches, anybody who wants to work, I mean.
Questions,
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, we work with people. And as, you see, agriculture is agreeing with culture.
So you can
Agriculture. Yeah?
Oh, okay.
And then you have pharmacy, PHARMACY. And then you have FARMERSEE.
Going twice.
Pharmacy.
The one I
Okay?
turn on again.
So, the most critical thing that we have is our agricultural sector. Food security is paramount. Why were we shipping cotton, cane, bananas? We were able to satisfy a huge market, and now we have to import bananas, tomatoes, carrots, you know? So that just don't make sense, right? So when we embrace what our ancestors, because education moved people away from their culture. The farmer was the first man with a 4-wheel drive, you know, with a brand new 4-wheel drive. The farmer could have afforded a brand new 4-wheel drive. The farmer had a concrete house. All the farmers' children went to university. How many of them came back to the farm? You know? So we put, instead of saying, well, okay, let's come forward to the farm, or my child went to go and study biochemistry or law or whatever. How can you incorporate that knowledge into our people that we could expand on what we have? So that the problem is not really it's just that, I mean, I'm available. If you have something to do, I mean, we're available for that. You know, but at the end of the day, it has to be intrinsic motivation. Eh? You know, I could say boldly that I never really get no help from nobody, like no organization. I never depend to say, well, some organization. I was in Grenada and I saw the work that ICA was doing over there, like about 2 weeks ago, and I was there with the brother in charge of ICA and going around, and I see the farmers, they're very aggressive. They, you know, a lot of programs. And I'm saying, well, we have ICA here too, so I'll have to see what's happening. You know, I'm telling a lot of programs. I know, I was there. You were there? A lot of programs for farmers. So I think what Sister Kiflin is doing is beautiful, my sister. You know, as a young woman, you could be anywhere, huh? Some little office, yeah, you choose to be here, you know. So we have to commend her for that. And just need more young people that could just take up the mantle. Remember, there's a lot of money in agriculture, you know. A lot of money. Yeah.
There is, but the challenge we face is, it's really the way we connect. That's why I ask you if you have, because I would have consultations or we would have invitations, but everybody is just so busy. And I think what we need to do is...
You sent me an invitation? Let's be personal.
You for sure did not get an invitation.
Okay.
I remember that much. I did not even know that you could have been invited, so that's why.
There is an ancient Egyptian or Kemetic god called Semenkri, the one so most often forgotten.
It seems like we want the same things, but we are not working. Yeah. We are not looking for
I'm
each
here
other.
whenever you're ready.
So, thanks.
I'm here. I'm right here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Is a question or comment?
Comment.
Okay.
You spoke about the earth healing. You spoke about the earth healing, and I would like to say that it is absolutely true. And the young lady before me said, people don't have time. But if you don't take the time to heal, not just through food, but using the earth as your guide, we won't be here. It took me 3 years. I left the north, I moved down to the south, and I went on a healing journey, just using nature. And it was amazing. It was the best thing I did for my mental, physical, emotional health. So I would encourage everyone to follow this advice, free advice. Thank you.
Well, I'm not adding any vices, eh? Okay, I'm giving some guidance.
Hi, everyone. My question is, I was here.
Yeah, go ahead, my sister.
I was here 2 days. I was here yesterday, today. So I've had a overview of a lot of information. I don't live here, but I do have. I'm from here. My question is about the hemp product.
Hemp?
Hemp.
You're talking about ganja or?
Hemp.
Hemp?
Yes.
No, hemp, cannabis?
Hemp.
Sativa, indica? What?
Hemp for hemp products.
Oh, hemp for
which
hemp,
is legal.
Okay, all right.
Has always been legal, the legal aspect of it.
Well, it's illegal already, you know. You really cannot bring hemp seeds here.
It's illegal?
Yeah, you cannot. I mean, it's really in the bird food and everything, and you could buy it in the health food shop, but then you really...
So I noticed that every time my mom, we don't do cows product, we don't do dairy products, and I have to send hemp milk for my mom because I can't get it here. I want to know what could be done about importing hemp products. If we can't have the seed here, can we have it imported?
Yeah, well, my honorable brother there, Mr. Dylan Inglis, will be speaking about that. You know, but I've had my own difficulties dealing with that. You know, but you know, well, the bill's supposed to be, or the bill supposed to be passing anytime.
Okay, so even in the United States, it's hard to get hemp. Whenever
Yeah.
it's good, they take it off the shelves.
Yeah.
And I have that challenge as well.
Yeah, but see,
And I noticed that's what's happening.
One of the
Whatever is
things-
good, they take it off the shelf.
yeah. One of the things also is that most of these things on the shelves, you know, it's when I tell you it's hemp milk, probably it's 0.001% hemp and 0.99.1119 all other stuff. Right? So better you now. You see like coconut milk? Nothing better than coconut milk. All right? So coconut milk contains iodine, zinc, medium chain fatty acids. Right? Excellent.
Thank you so much. I very much appreciated the comments that you made today. And I just wanted to share, I spoke yesterday, I was sharing a little bit about the support that we've been able to give Helen's daughters from the Clara Lionel Foundation. And I just wanted to share for anybody who is interested, based on what you shared, that we currently do have a call for proposals open to provide resources and support to people that are working on Indigenous health, this idea of health coming from our communities. And I've shared the information with Keithlyn, and she promised that she would circulate it with anyone who is interested. But we really are looking for how we can support this work, not just across the Caribbean, but also with places like the Gullah Geechee communities in the U.S. South as well, so that we can create also a community of learning and spaces where we're able to share some of the things that we're doing to support Indigenous health. So I wanted to share that that's available. Keithlyn has the information, but also if you find me, I'm happy to share more information about that. So thank you.
Give thanks, my sister. Well, what I would say is that to add to what you said is that, you see, our people need hand-holding, you know. Right? We have to always have long-term aspirations. If you plant a coconut tree today, 5 years' time, you'll drink coconut. And the 5 years will pass. Right? So if we say we have a shortage of coconut now, you could literally now plant 5, 6, 7 acres of coconut. And in 5 years' time, you'll be harvesting coconut. Right? So it is that ability to handhold people, because changing people's perception and allowing people to see, well, yes, there's a way. Because just to fill up a form is a turn-off for some people. Right? And sometimes you might say, oh, boy, we have a conference and the man come one day and you're not coming the other day. Sometimes you have no food to eat. Right? Or so many different issues. So it has to be some very holistic programming whereby you really consider people. Like, really consider people. And just try your best to think the best. So if the person's supposed to come at 8 and they're late, so your words alone cursing the bus. But probably they would, as you start to speak bad, boom, they get a bus tire. When you could just say, I'm serious. When you could say, okay, guidance and protection, I pray that the spirits guide him. So positivity, and really holding the hands of our people. The youth needs the help. When they say the young men are very violent, which young men? Where they come from? Mars. Right? So the young men never came from Mars. The 15-year-old was 5. They were 5. So when you look at most of our other, look at Jamaica and all these other countries, there is St. Lucia has been blessed. Okay, we have Julian Alfred, she won a gold medal. We have Darren Sammy. You have Sister Keithlyn, you have Priest Kailash. Right? We have some wonderful people whereby we could just channel the energies of the youth. 5-year span, 10-year span, and say, well, you'll do something for Julian Alfred and ensure that a legacy is created via the youth. And you have an aggressive program of hand-holding for the youths. So when we invest when we want to stop crime, they say, well, Priest Kailash is the criminal's friend. I am. They have a father, they have a mother, they have a daughter, they have people they love. And It's not foreign. Your own child can end up there because it's beautiful. So if it is that we don't really change our focus and get our youth engaged, it's not going to be a beautiful experience. So we cannot pretend like the young people are bad. They are a product of the homes, a product of the schools, a product of the churches, you know. And I personally, my personal testimony is that my life was saved by my teacher. He's a teacher who you know, Bolo from Sozel, Dr. Charles. Yeah, Bolo saved me. You know, Bolo is my Christ. Like Christ the Savior, Bolo literally intervened in my life as a young man and made me know I was bright. When Bolo made me know I was bright, I came first in my class every term. Just because Bolo made me know I was bright. And Bolo used to take time and come all by my mother's house, all the way in Lagos Library. Right, so everyone's supposed to take one person to mentor. Take one person and mentor them. Yeah.
Yeah, just one question from me. How does one decide which herbs or foods are for nourishment and which are for healing specific conditions? Especially for someone maybe who did not grow up on their grandmother's words or what they did. How does one distinguish between the two?
Well, right now, I mean, it's much easier now. You could just go on Google or AI. You know, I'm very serious, you know. What you do, if you want to look at Spanish needle, which is Zebazedri Biden spilosa, you could just put Biden spilosa, medicinal properties, scholarly articles. All right? Then you would get hundreds of research papers. There are thousands of research papers done on feuille de vin and exactly what it's good for. There's patented medicine on feuille de vin for prostate cancer. Right? So there are thousands and thousands of articles on soursop, thousands on guava, carpenter's bush, St. John's bush, vervine. Just name the herb. If you're interested, put the name of the herb and you want to know what it's used for this, and put scholarly articles, medicinal properties. You'll get all of it. So everything is there.
Thank you very much, Priest. Thank you, audience. This concludes our first balcony chat for the morning. Thank you, Honorable.
Honorable, thank you so very much. I presume you're going to stick around for a bit?
Oh, let me ask you.
All right. the words. So, Honorable will be around. I know a lot of you got questions and you would like to interact with him. He's going to be on hand for a few more, so please profit the opportunity. Now, before we move along, Amira, thank you for coming. Thank you so very much for coming. Dr. Fletcher is also here. He's going to be conducting the next balcony chat that is coming up. Food is also ready. We don't want you to go now because Dr. Fletcher is going to be the next balcony chat, and this is going to be a wonderful, very vital conversation as well, dealing with climate change and the realities of climate change. We hear a lot of that when we speak of agriculture. So this is going to be another wonderful discussion. But remember why we are here. Helen's daughter is the one who has, designed this remarkable first-time conference here where we are getting to witness and, interact in such a beautiful place. So many conversations that, a lot of the time, a lot of conversation, we talk a lot. We do so much of that. There's always a conference somewhere. There's always something happening on climate change here, and then 5 years, 10 years, we having the same conversation. So we're not making progress. That's how I view it. If we're talking about the same thing every 10 years, it means that we are not making any progress. Nothing is happening on the things that we are talking about. So clearly, we are not going past the talking stage. So that is why yesterday, during one of the conversation pieces with the husband, with the wife, she there, the husband there somewhere. I don't know if he can come up today. I think they live in Minikai. They say he talked too much yesterday. There, how's he? He there. All right, good. They bring him up. Look him in the back there. Look you. You helped me pack this morning, you. Right. So when he started to speak yesterday, and Massey Stores is one of the sponsors, and we love and we appreciate them, and they are doing their bits. Massey is doing their thing when it comes to assisting in the agricultural sector. And when he made a mention, in his jovialness, and he was speaking, he said, you did more than me than Massey Stores. And I saw everybody, my little, my assistant run, oh my God, he can't say that. That's not nothing wrong, but that's how we were cultured. And that is what we do, because that is what is expected of us when we come to forums. Because this person is here supporting us, let's not say anything bad. But what if it is a fact? What if it's something that needs to be said that can help to change going forward? We need spaces where we can speak, regardless of who is supporting. And this is what, Kitlin, I really would love to see that forum, that this sort of conversation is created. And the people who are supporting, please don't get offended. If something needs to be said and somebody feels and that's their reality and they want to say it, it might be you, but be a little bit more open and receptive to the information, because at the end of the day, it shows that we want to make the positive changes. And this is how I like to have that's why I excuse myself from a lot of conversations, because if I'm going to be sheltered or cultured in what I need to say because of who is supporting or who's not supporting, then we're not getting anything done. So I really do appreciate everybody who's on here. So let's make a concerted effort that we are going to create a space here, and you as well as the audience, you have to also be, a big part of that is on you as well, because you also have to be receptive enough to say, well, okay, it doesn't mean that Massey is bad. Massey is doing their thing. Maybe that's as much as they could do, so we appreciate that. But it doesn't mean that, okay, they're not reaching that melt. So somebody else might have to step up and meet that one. So you don't have to come and say, well, Massey is a bad place, or this one is a bad thing, because that was said. No, we need to stop meddling and muddling everything. Take things for what it is that it is said and leave it at that. Right? Especially in this season, in the silly season. I'm so happy we don't have that to deal with here now. Thank you for that, Kitlin, keeping it out, so we have a conversation that is not muddled up on that platform. Right, Kitlin, speaking of, I would like you to, highlight some of the areas in which Helen's daughters continue, because let me tell you, Helen's daughter doing a lot. And it is vital for us to stay in tune as well to all of what is going on. Yeah, I know, me and the mic. It's very vital for us to stay in tune with everything that is happening under this banner, under this movement, under this community. And for us we can't say we don't know. So that every opportunity that we do get where we can support whatever is happening here, we take it. And we help Kiflin and her team to keep doing the great and amazing work that she's doing. We've got to make the commitment right now. Kitlin, you want to share with us some of the things that's happening?
Good morning, everyone. Before I go into a bit about Helen's daughters, I just wanted to make a few mentions. You can see some of these lovely expos on the sides and also on level 2. These are not just our sponsors, but also our partners. We wanted you to feel connected to the persons who could truly support you in whatever journey you're in, whether that's agriculture, whether that's agriculture aligned. So please make some time to go to the different booths, ask as many questions as you'd like. We know that also some persons need to eat on time, some persons have woken up early. Food is ready, so you can go down to level 2 to get something to eat. However, we would love for you to stay though for this next balcony chat. And of course, Helen's Daughters has a beautiful booth up top as well. We are a non-profit organization that supports women in agriculture in various ways. We're not just the farmers market organization. So we have programs, training programs. We have a structured care system. So things like completely free telecounseling. Also, we focus a lot on market access. So again, our ladies are also downstairs. We've created a small farmers market for you downstairs, so you can try to, patronize the ladies as well and support. And yeah, this is a fluid space, so feel free It's not just you don't have to sit down the entire day. It's very fluid. After this balcony chat, we will break out. So you'll be able to get lunch. But remember, there's workshops. There's the petting zoos. We will have volunteers who will be able to lead you to the various sites. So we have 3 levels. And we are also taking, we are also covering the space near the greenhouse, and also there's a workshop in the greenhouse as well. So we want you to have a very full experience, and we will have guides to help you through. So that's it for me.
For now. Thank you so much. So we're getting there. Absolutely. I think it's time now for the next balcony chat, and that, of course, is a topic. Yeah, it's a hot topic. It's a hot topic. We hear a lot about climate change. There's so much happening in that space. So much is happening. That's not the problem, though. So much is happening in that space. And of course, this gentleman right here, if you're Lucian, you must know, this man has been talking about climate change for as far as we can remember. Listen, a lot of the things we're experiencing right now, he was talking about it years before it actually started to happen. And when he was talking, people, we didn't understand, so we thought he was a madman. And now we understand what's going on. We're looking for him now. Let me tell you, I just find him and I said, Dr. Fletcher, I want to see you because now I understand what he was saying years ago and understand how it is now that the man knew what he was talking about. And so now our next balcony chat will be spearheaded by the managing director of Solaricon. Is it? I get it right, Dr. Fletcher? All right, there you go. Dr. Jimmy Fletcher. Please welcome Dr. Fletcher, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, the topic will be climate change realities. Rahim, of course, it's up to you.
Yeah, thank you. You could go there. Thank you very much, Maureen. It's me again. You hearing me? No? One. Support team staff. Tech support. Error 404. Oh, hello. 1, 2, 3. Hello. All right. So here again. I mean, I could tell you at least. Dr. Fletcher is sort of like my godfather type. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. I'll send you adoption papers next week. Just look for it in the mail. Anyway, Doc, thank you for joining us here for this balcony chat on climate change realities. So, Doc, in the most basic sense, tell us, let's start back, I guess, with very basic first principles. Tell the audience what is climate change. Tell us how it affects small island developing states like ours. Let's start there.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Hi, everyone. Good morning. That's better. I thought I was looking at AI in front of me. Okay, so climate change is a change in the weather system observed over a long period of time, usually 30 years. So people will tell you sometimes, but it's snowing, or how are you talking about climate change when that's weather. Weather is what you observe on a day-to-day basis. So it's hot today, it's rainy today. If you're in the US, it's snowing today. That's weather. But what happens to that weather system? The rainfall, the temperature, humidity, all of these things over an extended period of time, over 30 years, is how we determine whether the climate is changing or not. So what we've observed is that, particularly since we started overproducing, and I was so intrigued by a lot of the things that Priest Kailash was saying, because that really is at the basis of climate change. Climate change, the climate has always changed. You heard about in the time of the dinosaurs, and then the dinosaurs went extinct, and when you had a totally different climate on this planet, that was natural. So because of we live on a planet that is living, that planet has always gone through changes. What is different this time is that we are causing the change. So that's why it's referred to as man-made or anthropogenic climate change, which is climate change that's made by man. And that's when we started producing, because our appetite for goods, for cell phones, for cars, for everything that these factories produce, that appetite just grew and grew and grew. So we started producing more and more and more. To produce, we need to burn electricity, so we need to burn fossil fuels, we need to burn diesel, oil, gas. Once we started burning those things and burning it at a high rate, we started putting out what are called greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Now, you are farmers, so I don't have to tell you how a greenhouse feels. But if you stand in the greenhouse anytime during the course of the day, you'll find that the greenhouse is warmer than outside. Why? Because the covering of the greenhouse, be it plastic or glass, it traps the heat inside. So it makes it difficult for that heat to escape out into the atmosphere. And that's what makes the greenhouse so good, because you could control the climate in the greenhouse. Well, greenhouse gases work the same way. When these factories are putting out all that smoke, what they're putting out is a lot of carbon dioxide, because when they burn things, they produce carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide forms a blanket around the planet, and that blanket traps heat. So if you're sleeping at night, and let's say it's January and it's quite cold, you put a bed sheet on top of you, that might help you. But if it's too cold, you need to put a warmer comforter, something that's thicker. That's the same that's happening with climate change. The more and more of these gases we produce, the thicker that blanket becomes. And it's not just carbon dioxide. It's also methane or methane, depending on how you want to pronounce it, which is the gas that is produced from landfills, from animals like livestock, cows. You know, when they give out gases, they produce methane. So these things, methane is another greenhouse gas. So we have three principal greenhouse gases: nitrogen oxide that you get from fertilizers, methane that you get from landfills when things decay or from animals, and carbon dioxide, which is what you get when you burn anything. So that is what causes that greenhouse gas, and that's what causes the planet to warm up, and that's when you get climate change. So that's a long-winded explanation of what climate change is, but always remember, it's something observed over an extended period of time, and the difference now is that it is man-made. We are the ones causing it. There's a day that took place on the 24th of July, something that we marked on the 24th of July. Anybody knows what it is? If you can tell me what it is, we have some comic books out there. I'll give you the first 3 volumes. Anybody? Hand up, anybody?
Not you, Kiflin.
Pardon? No.
Claudia?
July 24th.
Claudia, your hand was up?
It has changed every year, so it's not the same. So I'm helping you out. It's not like it's World Environment Day or Planet Day. Yes?
Yes, Claudia?
Awesome. Earth Overshoot Day. She nailed it. It's Earth Overshoot Day, so it's when the planet used up all the resources that it produces in the course of a year. So the equivalent for you, so you'll get a set of our Climate Tipping Point books. Genesis will find you and give it to you. What happens, that's the equivalent of you have a budget, right? So you know over the course of a year, let's say you like Ryan, you make $30,000 a year, right, over the course of the year. So imagine if by the 24th of July, you've used up all the money that you're going to make for the year. What happens for the rest of the year? You either have to go without, which you cannot because you have to live, or you have to borrow from somebody. I won't say steal. You have to borrow from somebody to last you through for the rest of the year. That's what is happening with our planet. Every year, Earth Overshoot Day is getting closer and closer to January. Earth Overshoot Day really should be around the 31st of December. We should use up all of our resources on the last day of the year. But because we have this appetite and we're using up a lot more than we're generating, Earth Overshoot Day is getting closer and closer to the beginning of the year. And that's what's happening to the planet. Because we are using up much more than it is able to replenish, then you get all of these bad consequences. So that's climate change explained in a kind of nuts and bolts way, but we're the cause of climate change. It is what we are doing that is causing the climate to change at the rate that it's changing.
Doc, I want you to zone in on the agricultural sector. So you've sort of created the foundation for us, and tell us of the manifest effects on the agricultural sector while still giving us a visual representation of some of the major disasters that we've had and how you've looked at the decay or the destruction of the sector in the context of the disasters.
Thanks, Ryan. Great question, particularly given the audience that we have. So now, there are 2 things. Whenever I talk about climate change, I always tell people there are things that the climate is causing to us, and there are things that we're causing to ourselves that are making what the climate is doing to us a lot worse. So I'll start off with what climate change, how it's impacting the agricultural sector and farmers. One of the obvious things you see is that it's much hotter now than it was before, right? So the temperatures we're experiencing now are hotter temperatures than we probably experienced, if you're my age, than you experienced in your 20s and 30s or 10, 15 years ago. And again, that's because of those greenhouse gases that I'm talking about. Now, as a farmer, that has very many consequences. First of all, the productivity of your crops might be different because for some crops, it's just difficult for them to have that same yield when temperatures are always in their 30s than they would have when they are in their 20s or their mid-20s. Some cultivars, some species, some varieties, of plant do better in certain temperature ranges. So as the temperature gets hotter and hotter, it makes it difficult for those plants to now produce the same number of flowers or for those flowers to set fruit the same way. So that's the first problem. So you'll have the hotter temperatures change the whole physiology of the plant. Secondly, the hotter temperatures make it difficult for you as a farmer to work outside. I mean, I am very lucky. I get to spend most of my time indoors in an air-conditioned office working. If I had to be spending a lot of my time outdoors like you do on your farm, I really don't know how I would survive, because I get out of the shower and I walk out and immediately it's like I've showered again. I'm just dripping with sweat. You have to be doing that every single day. As those temperatures get hotter and hotter, it is more difficult, more uncomfortable, and more unhealthy for you to farm, because you're farming in hotter temperatures. I just came back from Nepal. To go to Nepal, I had to travel through Doha, Qatar. I walked out in the temperature, and that was at night. The temperature was 37 degrees Celsius at night in Doha. During the day, it goes up to 40 degrees. Can you imagine what 40 degrees Celsius feels like and having to work out in that temperature? Now, we may not get there, but we are slowly moving in that direction. So it makes it unhealthy for you as a farmer to work out in those temperatures. The other thing climate change is doing is that it's messing up our water cycle. So we can't predict the rainfall the way we used to be able to predict it before. Most of our agriculture in St. Lucia and in the Caribbean is rain-fed. We're not depending on irrigation. We're not depending on drip irrigation. Some of you do, but most of you have to depend on rainfall. When it does not rain, your crops are under stress, particularly if you have vegetables. I know farmers who farm, particularly like in the Marquis watershed. The Marquis River is a very interesting river. During the rainy season, it has a very good production of water, but during the dry season, it almost drops down to a trickle. So farmers who are doing vegetables along that Marquis River have a serious problem. I know many farmers abandon their farms, their vegetables, during the dry season. So as a farmer, there are serious consequences for you. The other thing that climate change is doing is that it's causing the ice at the North and the South Pole to melt quickly. As that ice melts, then the sea levels rise. As the sea levels rise, it means that salt water is encroaching further and further inland. So your soils now will become more saline, which will affect the productivity of your soils. There's some things that you will not be able to grow. Again, as I said, I just got back from Nepal yesterday. And one of the things I did not know about Nepal is that Nepal is considered the third pole. So you have the North Pole, you have the South Pole, but you also have all the mountains of the Himalayas, Everest included, that have a lot of ice over them. Nepal has the third most ice after the North and the South Pole. And again, they're seeing some serious impacts of climate change because that ice is melting. So water availability is changing for farmers, for people, the whole, all of the farms that are in that general area being impacted. So it's not just us in the Caribbean, but it's all around the world. Climate change is having very serious impacts on agriculture, primarily with heat and water.
Doc, thank you for that. Audience, be minded as well that we will come to you for a few short questions momentarily. Doc, tell us a bit about, and of course we know all of the international obligations, the commitments, what the Global North has done and what they should do. Tell us what do you think we could do internally in our everyday lives, whether it be as farmers, whether it be as just general members of the society, to be able to reduce our own emissions, albeit that it's probably 0.000001.
That's an excellent question, Ryan. There are two things. I'll look at it, first of all, from what we can do to reduce our emissions. Now, when Ryan speaks about the emissions, he's talking about how much greenhouse gas we ourselves produce, right? Because, as I said, it's people who are producing carbon dioxide that are causing that concentration of greenhouse gas to increase, which is what is causing climate change. Now, in St. Lucia, our production of greenhouse gas, particularly carbon dioxide, is 0.008%. So that's like actually dropping one raindrop in the ocean. It will not make a difference if tomorrow St. Lucia converted entirely. So Lucelec stopped burning diesel for it to produce electricity, and it started using geothermal, which we have an abundance of in this current area, solar and wind. All of you stopped driving vehicles that run on diesel and gas, and you started driving electric vehicles. If we shifted the entire country to electric that is produced by solar, wind, and geothermal, that would not make any change whatsoever because we are not the cause of this problem. The cause of this problem are The Americans, the Europeans, the Japanese, the Russians, these are the ones who've been burning fossil fuels in their factories to create this problem. However, it would make sense for us to change away from using fossil fuels. Why? Because of your electricity bill. You are paying 40 US cents, or the equivalent of $1 for every kilowatt hour of electricity that you're using at your home, right? That sun is free. The wind blowing around us is free. So why should we be spending so much money to pay for electricity when God has given us, or whichever creator you pray to, has given us an abundance of natural resources that can do for us the same thing that the fossil fuels are doing? So from an economic point of view, it makes sense because we're wasting a lot of foreign exchange buying diesel to put into generators in cul-de-sac that Lucelec is running for it to generate electricity. All you need is solar panels on your rooftop, or we need a couple of wind turbines around the place generating that same electricity. We don't have to import 1 gallon of oil, and it will not cost us any money. After you've paid for the solar panels on your roof, I put solar panels on my roof. At the rate I'm paying Lucelec, it will take me 4.5 years to pay for that entire set of solar panels that I put up. So after 4.5 years, I will not be paying for electricity again, and I would have fully paid up for those solar panels. And those solar panels have a lifespan of 20 years. So I don't have to worry about that for another 20 years. So those are some of the things that you can do and we should be doing because it makes sense economically. It also makes sense environmentally because the more diesel, even if we're not burning a lot of diesel to produce fossil fuels, but we're still polluting the atmosphere. If you drive by Lucelec, by cul-de-sac, you'll still see smoke coming out from those smokestacks when these generators are running. That's polluting the atmosphere. So the more of that we can stop doing, the better. However, for me, the more important part of that question is, what can we do differently? And that's where I spoke about climate change is what the climate is doing to us, but also what we're doing to ourselves because of the climate. So when we do not protect that land that we have, right? So the land that Keeflin and all of you farmers and all male farmers and anybody involved in agriculture, that land that is so productive to us, whether it's to grow nutraceuticals like Pri said, Vevenachewat or Simecotois or whatever, or to grow citrus or root crops, that amount of land is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking because we have no land use policy in St. Lucia. 50 years ago, we had 180,000 acres of land, agricultural land in this country. 180,000 acres. That was the census that was done in 1974. You know how many acres we have of agricultural land in this country right now? Somebody guess.
No comic book, you're guessing?
75,000. We've gone on from 180,000. Well, sorry, I'm wrong. The last time a census was done in St. Lucia was in 2007, 18 years ago. So that figure is lower now because I can tell you over the last 18 years, there are places that were under agriculture that are not anymore. When I was a young boy driving down and I got to the bottom of the Mon Road, there were banana farms all in that area. You know what's there now? A drive-through KFC. So that's what we've done. We've moved away from being able to feed ourselves, as you heard from Priest Kailash before, to now depending on foreign foods that are getting us sick, that we don't have the resilience to be able to deal with everything. But it's not just that. It's also the fact that where before we had a lot, this is not the right area because you have an abundance of vegetation. But drive into Castries now and look at the hills. The hills that had vegetation, that had trees. So whenever it rained, that rain dropped down onto the soil. It percolated down into the soil, and it didn't cause a problem. What we have now, where those hills were, what we have now are houses with concrete pavements and with roofs that are now trapping that water. That water goes down onto a concrete pavement, and then it gushes down that slope. There's no ability to trap that water anymore. It causes a problem lower down. We also have an abundance of plastic in this country. Plastic that is clogging up our waterways. So where that water used to be able to flow very naturally, Cassava has a song where it says, toute la rivière qui descend dans la mer. Right. Well, our La Rivières are not descending in La Mer anymore. They're stopping somewhere because we have plastics that are stopping that water. And wherever that plastic or the things that we dump, be the fridges or the old things that we put in our rivers, they're creating mini dams that are creating problems. So we see rainfall now that my parents and grandparents saw in their time that did not cause the kind of problems for them that is causing for us. That's not climate change, that's us. That's us. That's us that are living badly, that are not understanding that we have to live in harmony with nature. We can't just be taking and taking and taking. So I like when every time somebody sees something, they blame it on climate change because it helps my cause. It helps my cause to make people understand just how much of an impact climate change is having. However, if I have to be honest with you, I'll also tell you that a lot of the impacts we're seeing because of climate change are worse because of what we're doing. So the answer to your question, Ryan, is not just moving away from burning fossil fuels and going electric, but understanding that we have to live together with nature. You know, you cannot cause this country to go from being a tropical island to a concrete jungle and expect that there are no consequences to that. We are not meant to live that way. And because we are living that way, we're causing problems to ourselves.
Doc, before we go to the floor, tell us, if anything, the relevance or the utility of indigenous knowledge as part of fighting climate change, and whether we're too far ahead or we still have some time to reverse some of the consequences.
I don't know.
Give us your best examples.
Who chose these questions, Ryan? You did?
Kiflin and I.
Wow. Awesome. Indigenous and traditional knowledge is so important. Again, the presentation before spoke about that. But I'll give you one simple example. Was it 2 years ago? We had some massive floods in the north of the island, right? Remember that in November? It flooded really badly. 2 areas in particular were really badly hit. La Viamita and Grand Riviere. Why do you think they called it La Viamita and Grand Riviere? What does La Viamita mean? Middle of the river, right? What does Grand Riviere mean? Big river. Both of these were floodplains. Our foreparents knew that's what they were. That's why they called them that. But we, in our knowledge and wisdom, believe that we can train nature or we can retrain nature. So where that used to be the floodplain before, the river used to go, we can redirect the river and we can plant somewhere else or we can live somewhere else. When that water is coming down, it takes the path of least resistance, the path that it has always known. So where does it go? La Viamita, middle of the river. Where does it go? Grand Riviere. And that is why we have those problems. So we're not using the knowledge of our foreparents. And I'm a scientist, so I will put my hand up and tell you my first degree, when Priscilla spoke about biochemistry, that was my first degree. I did my first degree in biochemistry, I did my PhD in plant physiology. So all my life, I've been involved in science and reviewing and looking at what scientists like myself say. However, I will tell you that the greatest set of scientists and observers were our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents. You know why? Because they noticed things over a period of time. So when we as scientists believe that we do some experiments for 3, 4, 5 years, and we can tell you definitively what will happen over the next 20 years, that's nonsense. The people who can tell you definitively what will happen over the next 20 years are the people who've lived and seen what has happened over all those years, our parents and our grandparents. So indigenous and traditional knowledge is so important. Unfortunately, we have downplayed the importance and the value of indigenous and traditional knowledge because of science, because of traditional modern science. The two have to live hand in hand together. So yes, modern science is important because modern science has given us some breakthroughs that has helped us to get to points where we could not have. But particularly for island cultures like ourselves, you know, the Caribbean, the Pacific, where we have always lived in close communion and close communication with nature. Indigenous and traditional knowledge is so important, and we have to use it because we are going away from the things that helped us, and even some of the modern science. When I worked in the Ministry of Agriculture as permanent secretary, I'll give you a quick story. One Christmas Eve, my forestry officer, deputy chief forestry officer, came to me and said to me that one of our forest officers had been bitten on the range, the northern range, and he was in a really bad state. So we had to fly him out to Martinique. By the time he told me so, everywhere was closed. I had to take out my own money, get the helicopter to come in. I then did something that no permanent secretary should ever do. I then typed out on a government letterhead that the government would pay for his medical expenses because the hospital in Martinique would not take him. And I said, okay, I will deal with the public service afterwards, but I will not let somebody die on my hands because of bureaucracy. Flew him out to Martinique. Long story short, 4 months later, he comes into my office with a big bag of ground provisions, thanks me for what I did. However, Dr. Martin Didier, bless his soul, he's since passed, told me that the doctors in Martinique noticed that the symptoms from the bite from the feathers, it causes something called capillary thrombosis. And they believe that there might be something in the venom of the featherless that might be useful in fighting heart disease and high blood pressure. That's not so far-fetched, because a relative of our featherless is Bothrops caribeus, that's its scientific name. A relative of our featherless, the Brazilian pit viper, is what gave us the first ACE inhibitor that is used to treat hypertension, that's used to treat high blood pressure. So even the things, for us, the featherless is the most vile and hated animal in this country, because a bite from the featherless, if it's not treated properly, you can die. That featherless, the venom of that featherless, has been used to produce medication in the US to treat high blood pressure. But you know the Quevche and all of that? Some years ago, we allowed that featherless to be exported to the US. If you go onto the Kentucky Wildlife Zoo, onto their website, you'll see that the venom of our featherless is being sold for $250 a gram. It is the most expensive venom that you could buy for research purposes. Okay? We are not getting a cent from that. We have not patented it, we have not done anything with it, but that our featherless is being used, and those two featherlesses they took from St. Lucia, and I actually saw where one of our forestry officers signed off so that those featherlesses could be exported, because you can't just take two snakes and bring them to the US. There are all sorts of CITES forms that you have to fill. We gave them permission to do it, and they're experimenting on that. So we have an abundance of natural resources. That same indigenous and traditional knowledge that you speak about can turn us from being what they call a third world or developing country into developed country status. We have the resources to do it. We just don't value what it is that we have. Every year you have these research ships coming and berthing outside and mining our oceans and collecting things that they then turn into facial products and medicinal products. Well, what are we getting from that? And that's why it requires a whole change in our appreciation of what is ours. What is yours is not this iPhone 16. That's what you bought. What is ours is all of the resources around us, and we have to see how can we turn that into value that the other countries want from us, not that we are constantly buying things from them.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc. So I will come to you now for your questions and your comments, and be so guided that you will be standing in the way of your lunch. You have to come closer to me to be able to ask the question. Question or comment?
No question. Afternoon, everybody, and Dr. Fletcher. I wanted to ask, in relation to the comments you made about the solar panels at your property, at your house. You said you purchased those things, and it's in 4 years' time you would have paid it off with what you're paying to Lucelec. So my question is, why are you paying anything to Lucelec if you purchased your equipment, had everything installed? Where does Lucelec come into that, and how come you're paying Lucelec if the sun sends no bills?
That is such a great question, and you know why? You know what makes it so pertinent? Right now, I don't know whether you heard Minister King in Parliament, but Minister King said that he's opening up consultations for the last time on a new electricity supply bill that is being proposed. The reason I'm still paying to Lucelec is because there's a cap on how much I can produce. So Lucelec will only allow me to produce so much of my own electricity. If Lucelec would allow me and others like me to produce our own electricity, I will not be paying a cent to Lucelec. However, what the panels have put on my roof have done, they've reduced my electricity bill by an amount that will allow me. So let's say my electricity bill before was $1,200 a month. It has now gone down to $800, $750 a month. So that $450 I'm saving over the course of 4 years, 5 years, will be the cost of those solar panels that I put on. What I would like to do is to have enough solar panels on my roof that I don't pay a cent to Lucelec, which would help, because it's not just that, okay, but you're robbing Lucelec of money, but you're creating greater energy security, because I have batteries, so in the event, let's say there's a power failure, there's a hurricane, there's a power failure, I don't have to depend on Lucelec to come back on for me to get electricity. If you have it on your rooftop, you don't have to depend on Lucelec to get electricity. So that type of energy security is so important for countries like ours, but also anytime there's war in the Middle East, so Ukraine and Russia are fighting, or Trump is saying to somebody that they can't buy, he's saying to India they can't buy oil from Russia, and you have all of a sudden OPEC deciding that they're going to bring up the price of oil from $50 a barrel to $120 a barrel. You feeling it. However, if you have solar panels on your roof, you laugh when there's war in the Middle East. People are dying, you don't laugh at that, but you laugh over the fact that that will not affect your bill because you're producing your own electricity. We are in charge of our own destiny. And look at it from a government point of view. The government can now say to an investor who wants to come in, I can guarantee you that you want to come in and put this factory up so you could it's not a good idea. That's not a good because I was going to say to manufacture, to do agro-processing. Agro-processing should be done by St. Lucians, not by a foreigner. So anyway, let's say you want to do agro-processing. You can know that if you go into the bank to borrow money, the cost of electricity for your agro-processing, because electricity is a big input in agro-processing, it will not be any more than, let's say, 50 EC cents per kilowatt hour because you're producing your own electricity. You don't have to worry about fuel surcharge and all of these things. That is what we need. And I'm hoping that with this last set of and I'm so happy you gave me that pulpit for me to speak on, that with these last set of consultations that are going on, that we can have an electricity bill. Mia Motley said one thing in Barbados. Mia Motley said that the sun and the wind are God's gift to people. She doesn't see why she should, or the government should be making people pay endless licenses for them to use what God gave to them. I am hoping that at some point our government will say the same thing, because when they do, you will see what happened in Barbados. Barbados went from 10 megawatts of electricity generated by solar to 100 megawatts in the space of 3 years. Everybody was putting solar. Everywhere you go, you see solar. And we need the same thing to happen here so that we have that independence and we are in control. It does not make sense for you to be given resources and then you turn your back on those resources and you import fossil fuel to create electricity. So hopefully, when the bill is changed and the bill is passed, that will allow me and everybody like you to now put solar panels on your roof.
Okay, 3. Good afternoon to everyone. Dr. Fletcher. I'm Juliana Daniel Foster, and I have a few concerns. I noted someone mentioned your company's name, but I have one in your capacity in your post with CARICOM. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. So, yes, I know we've been on the climate change agenda for a while, and we get a lot of financing and support for that. But I find there's an issue with microplastics, and because of the Agriculture Forum, I was just wondering if the risk to us, not just in St. Lucia, but in the Caribbean, our soils, our quality of food, I'm not hearing that in the discussion. So with your expertise, if there's anything we need to know, what we need to look for. People are planting in a lot of containers. We say reuse, but I've always wondered, if the microplastic is a threat, should we really be replanting in those plastics? With regard to the energy,
Sorry, I'm just
it's
writing down so I don't forget.
Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You can only do one. 5 seconds.
Okay.
He's sticking around.
Yeah.
Okay. Doc, you can write this one down, and then you just answer all of them.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. And at CARICOM level, just quick, Okay. All right.
Come, next question. Thank you.
Good day to all. Do I ask both one time? So I have 2 questions.
Yes, Misha.
How is St. Lucia responding to climate change through policy and strategy? So the implementation of the Climate Action Plan 2004, that's quite fairly new. However, with the increase in climate change threats, I would say threats, impacting St. Lucia currently, are there any plans to revise the National Adaptation Plan, the 2018 to 2028, and or the NDC under the Paris Agreement? And I say and or because I know originally it was supposed to take place February of this year, but there is no documentation that I've seen or heard of in regards to this. And the second question right away, what is the projected economic...
Okay, one. Okay. Doc, you wrote that down, right? Next. Come.
Okay, good afternoon, Dr. Fletcher. And I was so excited that you're here today. I'm actually here for this because I'm very passionate where climate change is concerned. I'm here on behalf of, well, of course, Solar Dynamics and Solar Solutions. And when you spoke of the photovoltaic systems and implementing this into St. Lucia, case in point in Barbados, right now they don't even sell grid-tied systems, which are systems that are tied into the electrical company, and we're now introducing this into St. Lucia. However, upon, licenses and all the bureaucracy attached to applications for photovoltaic systems, are they planning on reviewing this so that PV systems are more accessible to St. Lucians? That way we can benefit in different programs as it relates to energy consumption, saving, storing, and whether persons can see that return on the investment, not just reducing the consumption, but as well as getting to sell that electricity storage to Lucilec and seeing that benefit for St. Lucians.
Thank you. Doc, write that down next.
Dr. Fletcher, simple question for me. More so I just think this is an appropriate forum to also speak about the recent ICJ ruling. So if that's something you can just inform the attendees on as it pertains to climate change and harm, I think that would be valuable for everyone.
Hi, good day. I have two short questions. ABS, how does it connect with climate change, and how do we get that clear between the lines of farmers, foreign investors? How do you tie it in?
Can you explain what ABS is?
ABS, the access benefit sharing.
For the benefit of those around. Yeah.
Okay, and also I wanted you to.
I did. Question, I'm sorry. Doc, go ahead.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, so the first question on microplastics, very, very good one. We actually, right now, the entire international community is trying to finalize a new plastics treaty, and that is causing all sorts of problems because the world cannot agree. The same way we had problems in getting the Paris Agreement and a climate change treaty, having similar problems with plastics. Plastics are a big problem. I think if we knew the amount of plastics we were consuming, we would be shocked and we'd be mortified. We are consuming a lot of plastics into our body from everything around us, from the oceans. I think they've said that maybe in the next 5 years, I can't remember the figure exactly, but there'll be more plastics in the ocean than fish. That is the magnitude of the plastics problem that we have. Now, I don't know if some of you are old enough to remember how we got there, but we got to plastics because there was a problem with paper, right? Because we were chopping down too many trees to create paper and cardboard products. So plastics was a nice alternative because you were not chopping down any trees. It was cheap. It was easy. Except, as we've always done with human civilization, we've gone to the other extreme. We now have to pull back on that. So we need a plastics treaty that would reduce on the level of pollution and reduce on the health hazard of plastics. It certainly is a conversation that I think our health authorities need to have, our governments need to have, because we are being exposed to carcinogens in all various ways, and plastics and microplastics are one of those carcinogens, and you don't also know what that is causing for reproductive health for women. I mean, it really is a nightmare, and it's a conversation that needs to happen. The policy and the strategy on the National Adaptation Plan and the NDC, you'll be happy to know that St. Lucia was one of the first countries. In fact, St. Lucia was the first country in the Caribbean to produce its new NDC, and NDC is a nationally determined contribution. Under the Paris Agreement, every country of the 196 countries in the world that are party to this Paris Agreement on climate change, every 5 years has to produce this document that says how will they adapt to climate change and how will they reduce their greenhouse gases emissions. St. Lucia produced its own NDC. The problem, it used to be my ministry, so I know it very well. The problem with technicians is that they're horrible PR people. So when they do good things, they don't come out and tell you that they've done good things, and they don't explain to you the good in what they've done. So nobody in this room should not know that St. Lucia was the first country in the Caribbean to produce an NDC, its third NDC, and what the impact is of that. But Somebody raise their hand. Anybody knew that before I said it? Don't be okay. Greg, you don't count. You, Udika, and you. Okay. Nobody else does. And that is a monumental achievement. And it is something that is fundamental to what is going on here right now with Helen's Daughters. What you're doing right now is something that really should be on every news item everywhere because it is positive. I used to be permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. I know how hard it is to get people to form into cooperatives. I know how hard it is to get people to cooperate. People, we have this tendency to want to do things on our own, not understanding that when we're small, there are greater economies of scale, and there's more impact that we can have when we do it together. Keithlin and Helen's Daughters have been able to do this, and do it in a sector that is so challenging. And you, please, give yourself a round of applause, because that is an awesome achievement. So, the same way the ministry has not done a good enough job of promoting what it's done if it's NDC, we have to do a better job, and not Keithlin, because I know Keithlin and Helen's Daughters do everything that they can, but the media has to do a much better job of bigging up Helen's Daughters, and Keithlin, I still think there's a lot more that you can do. I know it's weighing you down, I know you have not grown an inch since, and I know Aaron will not be happy to hear me say this, but there is so much more that I think Helen's Daughters can do and needs to do, but you'll need help to do it. So a credit facility, greater technical support, all of these things that the ministry has not been able to provide and Helen's Daughters is providing, we need to empower Helen's Daughters so that they can do, so that our farmers, we cannot go from a country of 180,000 acres of farmland to 75,000 acres of farmland and not know that what that means is that your children and your grandchildren will not be able to feed themselves. We'll have to depend on 40-foot containers coming from Miami every single day to feed ourselves in a country that has this type of resource. Like the young people say, make it make sense. That don't make sense. Okay, so it goes back to how, again, we appreciate and we use what we have. The next question, let me get to it very quickly. Grid-tied solar. Grid-tied solar, so the technology now is that with my solar panels, I am generating electricity, I'm using some of it at my home, and any excess I sell back to the grid. So Lucelec buys it back from me. It's doing it now via a process called net metering. So my meter works in reverse. So any electricity I produce in excess of what I'm using, my meter reverses. Now, the new bill will change that to something called from net metering to net billing. So what will happen is that instead of your meter going in reverse, Lucelec will buy that power back from you, but at a reduced cost from what it is selling to you. And I will be the first to put the hand and say, that's fair. Lucelec cannot buy electricity back from us at the same value that it is selling it to us. Okay? What we have to ensure is that whatever it is buying it back from us at is at a rate that is good enough to allow us to repay our investment. And that's where something that was created my last months as a minister, National Utilities Regulatory Commission, that will come in play. But the other thing is that you now have smart technology. You can have batteries. So whatever excess electricity and 32 countries asked the question. A unanimous resolution was put forward at the UN. And the UN decided to refer this question to the International Court of Justice that meets in The Hague. Those countries that asked the question met in The Hague last year, December. And St. Lucia was one of the countries with people like Kate Wilson and Genevieve Remy. And the ICJ has ruled, and the ICJ ruled last month. And that ruling came a few weeks after a ruling by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights that also responded, I think, to a question from Chile and Colombia. Same question. The ICJ said that those countries that are polluting the atmosphere with fossil fuels have a legal responsibility to provide reparations and restitution to the countries that they're damaging. They also said that there's something called intergenerational equity that comes in place now. It means that your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren have a right to the same type of environment and the same quality of life that we have, and if you are now putting that quality of life in peril, that there is a price to be paid for that. It also said that the countries that are losing their shorelines, their coastlines because of climate change, that they, let's say a country like Vanuatu or Kiribati in the Marshall Islands, or even some of the islands in the Bahamas disappear, that will not affect their rights. And that the same exclusive economic zone that they had before, even before they disappeared or before they lost their coastline, they will have it. So it was a landmark ruling, and for me, what it does is that it gives us the same tool that the people who were fighting the tobacco industry had in the 1990s. I don't know whether you remember, but back in the 1990s, the tobacco industry refused to admit that cigarette smoking caused cancer. Despite all the evidence, they said it was a choice. You made a choice, you made a decision to smoke, so cancer is on you. That was taken up, and there was $1 billion settlement that caused the tobacco industry to pay up to all of those states and all of those people who had suffered throat cancer and everything else, lung cancer. It was only then that the tobacco industry changed. It started putting warning labels. It stopped advertising to children. I believe that this ruling is the same thing, because as somebody who is very much involved in the climate change negotiations, unless we can make these countries pay for their pockets for what they're doing, they will continue to string us along, and that comes from my position as CARICOM Climate Envoy. They will continue to string us along and make us fight over words. In 2015, the entire Paris Agreement that we had negotiated months for and had lost how many hours and days of sleep almost unraveled over one word: should. When the Paris Agreement, when the final text came out, it said shall. The US said, we cannot sign this. It says shall, it means that we're obligated to do it, we will not sign it. We had to change shall back to should, so that should means it's discretionary. That's the kind of negotiations that I am involved in, where people are wordsmithing, people are negotiating over words, where people's lives are being destroyed and people are losing their livelihoods. Unless we make these countries start to pay through their pockets for what they're doing, and that's what this ICJ ruling does. The final question on benefit sharing, extremely important. It means that, again, going back to what I said, that if we have resources that are being used, that everybody has to be able to benefit from those, the use of those resources. So the whole access and benefit sharing, ABS part of the, I think it's CBD, is extremely important for us, and it is something that our governments need to pay very, very close attention to. Kiflin knows that whenever I'm here, I can always speak for days, but I need to cut it short, otherwise you will never go for lunch. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Fletcher. But you know what? We had the time. This is conversation that is so vital to us. It's so vital. So I know, Kitlin, when you're doing your recap and you're doing it, we're going to be making some adjustments to 2027. Well, 2027. Oh, I thought 2026. 2027. Well, we're gonna settle for 2027 for now. But Dr. Fletcher, always your contribution, your wealth of experience and knowledge is definitely always welcome. And thank you so very much for always checking for us in that regard. Thank you. Well, it's time for food, right? So you guys can grab your food. We're gonna be. So you have up until 1:40. What time is it now? Anybody can tell me? Yeah. We did well. Right, so you have from now until 1:40, because I'm not coming back here and make noise. You come a bit, watch your clock, put your little alarm at 1:40. Make sure that you'll be back here present. But there's workshops that is happening. Guys, so for those of you downstairs still grabbing your little bites, you can grab it and you can head on upstairs. If you have your food already in hand, there's no need to sit downstairs. You can come back up because we are continuing with the balcony chats. We're back on our live, so those of you who are definitely reconnected with us on the live feed, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook on Helen's Daughters platform, welcome back. Right, we're about to kick off. It's a third balcony chat. Yeah, my moderator is already waiting and ready. Now, we've got some invitees. We've got some friends, coming in to share their expertise and knowledge with us as well, because this is an all-encompassing conversation. And we want to make sure that when we're doing things or we engage people that we're going to have to interact with if we are going to make a difference. You understand? So this is not just something for St. Lucia, but of course, when St. Lucia gets to do what it needs to do, we will have to interact with our neighboring islands. And it's very vital that we include everybody in the conversation. So up next, joining the next panel on the discussion will be Weathering the Storm, Preparedness and Response. So it's Weathering the Storm, Preparedness and Response. And the panels will consist of a good friend from a Caribbean Humanitarian Response Lead, okay? And that is in the person of Jonathan Arrogetti. And I got that right. You can join us, Jonathan. You can come on up, grab a seat. And we also have the interim chair of Caribbean Gender Alliance, Nadella Oya. So these are the two panelists. Please give them a warm welcome. And of course, and then we have the moderator, of course, Rahim. Again, the conversation will be surrounding Weathering the Storm, Preparedness and Response. Here you go, Ra.
Thank you. Go ahead. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me in the back?
I behind you, I hear you in the back.
So thank you so much. My name is Jonathan Arrogetti, and as was mentioned, I am the Caribbean Humanitarian Response Lead for an organization called CARE. CARE works around...
Tell us where to stand up.
So, can you hear me now? I think we're going to sit. We're going to separate. Nadella. So what we're going to...
Oh, we need to stay far from each other. This is almost like a Zoom call. Is the mic on? Is it off? Unmute your mic. Okay.
So one of the things that I'm so excited to be able to speak with you all today is about weathering the storm. And of course we know what season we're in right now. We're talking about hurricane season, but we're not just talking about hurricane season. We're talking about any of the different hazards that we face here in St. Lucia and across the region. I'm so glad to be joined by my colleague, Nadella Oya, who, as mentioned, is the interim chair of an organization called the Caribbean Gender Alliance. And we work together to support civil society organizations in 13 countries across the region as they work to lead responses to disasters that they face in their own countries. When we come out of the conversation today, we're going to be thinking about three things. Three new or newer ways that we here in the region can be more effective to weather the storm, to make it through, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's a volcano eruption, whether it's a global pandemic, whether it's a hurricane, something that we face in our own context, so that we can weather that storm better.
And again, it's also important for us to be reminded that we do have a lot of Helen's Daughters membership here. We have our farmers. I mean, yesterday we were talking a lot about, how farmers are viewed. And one of the things that stood out for me is that in traditional education, we tend to look at math and languages as the things that we're tested on. If you do well in math and you do well in the subjects that are in school or taught in school, then you are bright, as we like to say in the Caribbean. However, there are 8 types of intelligences. Not all are tested in our traditional academic system. And anyone who is growing food, anyone who could get up in the morning and feel the temperature and know how to go and organize the yard or the clothes or whatnot, that's called naturalistic intelligence. People who could read water, our fishermen, our fisher folk, they have naturalistic intelligence. That is not taught or graded or assessed in schools. So Jonathan and I are very, very heartened to be in a room full of very bright and intelligent people who can do the work that not everyone can do. So thank you all for that. In light of that, what we intend to speak about today and what we want, again, as he said, for us to all leave with at the end of this session, the teacher in me going and come out here, the school teacher. You see the people who talking very close to the stage. I'm going to ask you all kindly, very kindly, if it is we could move the discussion a little further away. We are hearing you all. Thank you. As the teacher, sorry. So we want to look at, and as he's talking about weathering the storm, we're looking at how us as farmers, us as persons providing food, us as part of that ecosystem, how it is we respond to disasters, how we respond to emergencies, because we are primarily affected once it don't even have to be a hurricane, it could just be heavy rainfall, and we have what we call in Trinidad landslides, and what it was erosion can happen. So it doesn't always have to be trees blowing and crops being uprooted. It could be something as simple as heavy rainfall that can actually affect our livelihoods. And we're going to look at how women lead in that situation, in the response to that situation, how there's localized response and leadership, and how civil societies can also respond. Because we know the traditional response can be governmental, top-down. It can also be very male-led. It can look very male. And I'm looking at this crowd, and we have a lot more female faces. And there's a reason for that. We are very involved in our response to a lot of things in our households, as well as on national and regional levels.
So as Nadella said, again, today we're going to be focusing on three main ideas that we want you to come away from this balcony chat with. That in response to weathering the storm, we need more women's leadership, we need more local leadership, and we want and we need civil society organizations like Helen's Daughters, like other organizations represented here, to really take their rightful place in the response ecosystem. There's not just one response to an emergency, there's many responses, and civil society certainly has a role to play. When I think about women's leadership in emergencies, think back. I mean, I see people here of very different ages, so I'm going to throw out 2 hurricanes names. Some of you will remember them, and some of you will remember one of them, and I imagine the rest of us will remember the other. But think back to maybe Alan. Who remembers Alan here?
Show of hands.
Okay.
This is also us collecting data. So when you put up your hand,
you just dated yourself. We know how old you are if you remember Alan. Who remembers Thomas? And who remembers Beryl? When you think about that response in your minds, how many of the people leading that response in your minds were men? How many of those people leading those responses were women?
And even though St. Lucia was not directly hit by Beryl, as far as we understand, and you all can correct us on this if we're wrong, the sea moss farmers on these shores were affected by the tumultuous waters caused by Beryl. So how many, if you all could give us an idea, you could shout out a number, how in terms of the ratio of fisher folk and sea moss farmers that would have been affected by Beryl, by the effects of Beryl, about how many, what's the ratio of male to female? Half-half, mostly women, mostly men, mostly men. I'm seeing someone saying mostly men. And so in terms of how many women, how many? A ratio? 1%? 40%. So just a little under half. So that's still a fair number. Now remember, we also have women who are doing unpaid care work. Men are doing it as well. But remember, these same women that are also out there earning a living from the sea are also doing unpaid care work, may or may not have other jobs. So it's exacerbated a little bit for us, I'm saying us. It's exacerbated a little bit more for us because we're taking care of families, we are earning money, and we're seeing about households, which is very different to the taking care of the human beings. Seeing about a household is a whole economy on its own. So what we're looking at again is when women come to give information in regards to the response for a disaster, the information that they're bringing is going to be very different to if you ask the man in the household. And that is why we're saying that women have to be at the forefront of leading the response in a disaster and emergency, because the information that we will share and how we will share it and what we will talk about is not going to be the same as if it is you ask the men in the village or the men in the households. And that is why we have to be very clearly considered in our response to emergencies.
Great. So that's the first one. So coming out of this conversation, we're hoping that you're taking away an increase in women's leadership in emergencies in order for us to weather the storm. The second one is talking about more local leadership. And what do I mean by that? All too often in disasters around the world, there's too much decision-making that comes from very far away. People from outside of the country or the area affected are all too often deciding what that response looks like. But what we know, what us here in the room know, and I think many more people know outside of this room, is that
I'm going to know what I need there. I'm going to know what my children are going to need, what the animals in my yard are going to need, what my neighbors are going to need, what my elderly parents are going to need. A little bit more. We're in the trenches. So that is what we talk about when we say localized leadership, understanding from a local perspective what is needed. We think we know. And nothing is wrong with having, the folks representing and saying and trying to make decisions, but we have to give them information and data so that their response is actually something that we could use. CVA, a great example of that is sometimes, and it's a knee-jerk reaction across the region, we love each other. If it is a storm or something happens somewhere, everybody running to buy a case of water, toilet paper, and go in the cupboard and pick up all the old clothes and whatnot because they need clothes. And if a hurricane hit, they're going to need clothes. Why we think they might need our old panty and bra, I do not know. But they need, but we just get clothes, toilet paper, and water, case of water. When in reality, any of us in a disaster situation, we are not looking for no case of water. We have toilet paper somewhere. We put it on a high shelf while the water comes in inside of the house. And we definitely don't want, you might have a cool t-shirt from the 80s that I'll be happy to collect, but I do not want your old clothes. Please and thanks. And for those of us wanting to help, we're looking for plane and boat and this and that to get it on. Who collecting? So that we could get it to them because we think that is what response looks like. Even if it's not that situation, and it's a hamper or a package, it's a grocery box. Let's imagine I'm using my Helen's Daughters Farmers as an example. Let's imagine we have pumpkin, we get dasheen, yam, plantain, okra, the works we're putting together. Flour, sugar, salt, rice, butter, the works. And I remember when Keithlin spoke to this when we were here last month. She said, when you look at the first set of ingredients in that box, and again, what the doc spoke about yesterday, the NCD, the non-communicable diseases, hypertension, what we call salt, sugar, and high blood pressure in the Caribbean. The very ingredients in the box are the things that will exacerbate our high blood pressure, our salt, and our sugar. It's not necessarily the healthy things. I might love a pumpkin, somebody else might not. I might love a dasheen, somebody else might not. As I always tell Jonathan, I said, it have people who like smooth peanut butter and people who like crunchy peanut butter. If it is cash and vouchers are given in an emergency, then I could go to the market where the farmers are and buy what my household needs. If it is, I can go to the grocery and get what my household needs. And we're going to turn now, because regional voices are important, we're going to now look at some quick videos where we are hearing from our other folks around the region in terms of using this type of response, this type of mechanism, and this is just one of many, but this one in terms of how we respond to stuff in the region. My gentleman.
What's missing from the response in my country right now is the network. Often when they're in the network, meaning who's already on the ground or who knows who to call, and those individuals who are already in the community also knowing who to reach out to raise alarm about something going on. So that network is missing. It is often, the disaster happens and then the organization who wants to help has to call somebody that kind of knows who's on the ground in that hit area. Then you call that person and they may or may not know who the right person is who can actually represent the community in need. And because of that disjointedness and who knows and really understanding who is on the ground in any particular community, there is a delay in response because we end up spending more time just trying to find and identify who's in need versus being able to spend that time finding the resources to help those in need.
I think the region has not done the type of work necessary.
So one of the ideas that Gabby, and Gabby is comes from Guyanese descent, and she lives in Trinidad and Tobago now. Gabby's talking about being coordinated. But she's talking about being coordinated, not controlled. And one of the things that we are trying to do is that third piece on those three circles is by working with civil society, they do very important work, oftentimes the first response to emergencies. They're actually in the communities that are already affected. Is this microphone on, by the way? Okay. I'm not sure if that cut the thing. They're often in the communities, and they know exactly what types of assistance the exact people need. So working with civil society organizations in the entire family of organizations that are working with response, we have found with our work that is one of the most effective ways to help the exact people who need support in emergencies. So what I might do, I just want to check and make sure maybe if we can we put up video 2?
Let's see if that one works.
And if not, if we don't go to video 2, we have
I believe that looking at the current scenarios, issues such as maybe flooding, maybe hurricane, maybe fires, I feel that our networks with other women-led organizations, our experiences with other situations such as gender-based violence and HIV, I feel that we are able to respond, understand, and put vulnerable people in the center of the work that we do. And so using a systematic or a programmatic approach to cash voucher assistance, I think will just broaden that scope and enhance the work that we have been able to do on the ground targeting vulnerable groups.
My organization does a lot of work with the LGBTQI+ community, and very often when policy is being done, particularly in crises, in disaster situations, including things like COVID, right, we're often left out of gender analysis. And because of that, we become additionally vulnerable. And so I think the RGA is a really helpful tool because we very often need like quick responses to try to alleviate some of the issues that those vulnerabilities that make those people so vulnerable. And I think that having like a tool that is formatted in the way that it is, that kind of gives you a really clear way to think about risk management, to think about, basic needs is a really helpful thing for the community that we serve.
Countries have very good laws and policies. But the challenge is the appropriate and timely implementation of those laws and policies which exist. And so we're still having high numbers of domestic violence, interpersonal partner violence. We're still seeing children being sexually and physically abused. And now we're dealing with situations like trafficking. So while some things have changed for the better, we find now there are new things that are creeping in, for which we would need to have additional training on how best to grapple with them in our homes, our communities, and our country at large. So working through regional organizations and sharing best practices like CVA is one of the ways that we can address some of those challenges that we are experiencing.
So I'm sorry the first video cut off because that same lovely young lady that we saw at the end there, her name is Alexandrina Wong. She is from an organization called Women Against Rape, based in Antigua and Barbuda. She is one of the goddesses of the women's movement in the Caribbean, and she has been doing work day in, day out. She's originally from Guyana and has adopted Antigua as her home, Antigua and Barbuda. In the first video, she spoke a little bit about when Barbuda had to be the first video, which cut off, sorry, where she spoke about Barbuda having to be evacuated. And again, regionally, we experience so many emergencies, and there are shared experiences. I'm sure in some of these stories that we hear and will hear, that we hear from each other, that we see a little piece of what we experience at home as well, and how it is we can deal with it. And again, what they're speaking to is the role that women can play and should be playing in terms of emergency response, as well as where civil society and local decisions should be made.
So as we come to close this segment, this portion, we want to ultimately turn it over to you to share questions, to share experiences. I mentioned a couple of storms that have affected St. Lucia. There's much more that each of us have experienced in our lives in emergency space. But what we're working to build, CARE, Caribbean Gender Alliance, alongside great partners like Helen's Daughters and a constellation of organizations across the region, working to make sure that women are put at the center and are leading the responses to their emergencies in their lives, working with local organizations as local as possible, the ones who know exactly what the needs are that they face and that their community faces, and working with civil society as a sector that's well-resourced, that knows how to be responders, and knows how to help people in the best ways possible. So I know that we have our dear moderator who still needs a few more steps.
But we're also going to look at the very last one that brings home the CVA.
I have been thinking about the experiences that I have had, and I remember that there were times when maybe we would have given in-kind assistance. And I think that if we think about in-kind and the value of the in-kind assistance and did cash instead, I think it would have been a bit more empowering to the recipient. Why I say so, I'll give an example. You know, we might have given a basket of groceries that is worth $250. However, a person may have needed a bit of medication, maybe some cooking gas, maybe some transportation, a little, and some food, but they would have been better able to know what the needs were to ensure that their needs were better met, as opposed to say, you know, I have this and I have to use this. And so I think that promotes dignity. It promotes empowerment, and it promotes, I use the word trust very much, because I think in doing community work, you have to build trust with people so that they know and you support them and they support you in making sure that their well-being is taken care of.
What we have found sometimes, though, that even after the storm would have abated, some persons take a while before they go back to their home based on what their home conditions were prior to the storm. So the three things will be that psychosocial support, the money in hand so she can look after the needs that existed prior to the storm and now after the storm. And the third one is for her to get a safe shelter for herself and her family.
Nice. Yep. So we would like to turn it over to our amazing moderator. Look, look. We catch you.
1, 2, 3. So we can take 2 questions?
Comments, questions.
2 questions or comments. So 2 at 30 seconds each.
You can sit.
I'm very serious about this. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hi. When I think of responses as okay. I feel like, well, I know for a fact that at the forefront of this right now, we have digital mapping. So we have digital mapping for response, as well as digital mapping for planning for disasters. And so when you spoke about what we need to do in the Caribbean region, I realized that there are a lot of tools and technologies available around that digital mapping. And there are a lot of programs, some of which I myself are involved in, that train women within communities, community members, residents, to utilize these maps to respond. And sometimes even in handing out these CVAs, these groups such as Youth Emergency Action Committees can utilize these maps to find homes and to plan with response in terms of which homes have been given vouchers and which have not. So I wanted to know if you have considered organizations like Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team and other digital mapping technology organizations in speaking about response.
All right, so we'll take the other one time. You have a question or comment? All right, so give the question first. Okay, give the comment first.
Okay, so a lot of the times we have civil societies that do have the country's best interest at heart. However, the resources are stretched thin because they work individually. So you have Red Cross, who is responsible for the first 72 hours after the emergency, and thereafter NEMO takes over. So you have the NEMO CERT team, then you have the CDRTs, the NDRTs, everybody working individually on their own. So in the case of the CVA, with an organization like Red Cross who has the same CVA program for years, now that it's going to be implemented through another organization, then we have resources running thin where you have households getting twice. So from 2 different organizations, whereas there are households that gets none. How can we bridge that gap where we can work together rather than having the resources stretched out and one organization is able to start but not continue?
All right, thank you very much.
Yes,
So
thank you very, very much.
these are the 2. Thank you, go ahead.
I actually believe that the first comment/question addresses the second one, and it speaks to coordination, which in emergencies is something that everyone is still actually trying to get right. You have governmental organizations as well as civil society that are all aiming to respond, as well as you have individual households. The regular average human being usually wants to help when they see something happening to our neighbor, be it our actual neighbor in our community, or in another town, or in another island or country in the Caribbean. I mean, it's not just cricket that does bring us together and apart at times. We usually want to help, and coordination is key. And in speaking of the digital mapping, that is an absolutely necessary tool, especially as we have the technology. But guess what? The digital tools still need human beings to operate and run and manage and whatnot. And that still speaks to having a good coordinating effort. Sometimes you have, I'm going to say it, I don't know if you could say it. Sometimes you have competition in terms of response. Sometimes people want to get a picture in the papers. Sometimes the politicians want to show, I'm giving a hamper. And we understand, we're not aiming to stop that. We're aiming to actually, and this is where I will pivot to the second question. We want to ensure that everyone does get the help that they need. And something that I recently learned, it's actually better for somebody to get it twice than somebody don't get it at all, and we will actually focus on ensuring everyone gets, even if it's at the risk of someone getting twice, rather than someone is left out who is absolutely in need. And again, the digital mapping helps with that, and technology is being used, and we are going to come and chat with you after because this song passionate. I like how it deep in your heart, and we're here to have that conversation. That's why fora like these also helps, because we know that the subject matter experts are definitely in the room, and we want to hear from you all as well. So we're happy to make that connection as soon as this is over.
Wonderful. Well, there we go. Thank you so very much. That was quite enlightening.
Thank you to
Thank you
everybody.
so very much. You're just spirited Trini self. Thank you guys so very, very much. Wonderful. Well, we're moving right along with our fourth balcony chat, and this time around, we're going to be touching on the topic of cultivating change, the conversation on cannabis. We're having that conversation again today, you see? Vital. Absolutely. The person who is going to be... Right. Good. Dylan Norbert Inglis, that's you. There you are, CEO. Regulated Substances Authority is going to be sitting in on that conversation. And of course, Rahim, it's your call.
Thank you very much, Maureen. So, we'll talk about the pronunciation later. So, thank you, Dylan, for joining us for this conversation. Let's start right off the bat. Tell us about the RSA for those who may or may not have heard it, and what the specific objectives are.
The RSA stands for the Regulated Substances Authority, and there's a point to it being the Substances Authority. So whereas the majority of people see us as the Cannabis Authority, our mandate is a lot broader. So we regulate more than one substance. We are only about 6 or 7 months in existence, having started in December, and our mandate really is to examine the status quo relating to a number of substances which either are adequately regulated or are seen as inadequately regulated, to review the status quo and advise the government as to whether a new regulatory framework needs to be put in place, and after giving that advice, to implement that new framework.
So, I hear you, Dylan, but unfortunately we won't get to all of the substances, plural, today, because I think the audience is quite concerned about marijuana and the regulation of that. So talk to us thus far about what the components of the marijuana or cannabis regulation looks like from an RSA perspective.
Okay, so the development of the legislation for cannabis is about 6 years in the making. So we didn't start this yesterday. And we know that persons believe that we are late to the party. We like to think of ourselves as being the best dressed at the party. So the legislation as it stands now is split between 2 bills and some approximately 20 regulations. So the 2 bills would have been the Drug Prevention of Misuse Amnesty Bill, which speaks to an amnesty for current players in the cannabis market, both your cultivators and your sellers. And the second bill is the Regulated Substances Cannabis Bill, which is one of, as I said, the regulated substances. So that piece of legislation gives you the framework for the entire industry, whereby individuals will be allowed to receive a license for whichever activity within the cannabis space they intend to be involved in. So these would have been the 2 pieces of legislation, and we have, as I said, some almost 20 regulations which speak to cultivating, processing, transportation, dispensary at Class 1 and Class 2 level, which is something I'll get further into. The spaces for consuming, because you may require therapeutic space to consume. All of these activities within the space would have been regulated by way of a license, and we have regulations that speak to all of them.
So, Dylan, let's get into some of the specifics for part of the education of the wider audience. As part of reading through some of these draft pieces, I note of traditional licenses that focus on medicinal cannabis, small, extra small, large. Talk us through in a very broad way some of these different regulations without obviously going very, very specific on them, but just generally.
So anyone who has an interest in the industry should understand how they'd like to enter the industry. It can't just be, I want to be involved in cannabis. And in determining how you'd like to enter the industry, just like if you wanted to become a farmer, you need to know, I would like to plant this crop, which has these parameters and would grow best in these conditions. Similarly, I'd like to be involved in the cannabis industry and I want to be a dispenser. I want to necessarily get into seeds. I don't want to cultivate for the high potency product to sell, but I just want to get into seeds and seedlings to be able to supply the industry with seeds. There are various opportunities that exist within this space. So every time we hear someone saying, I have land to grow, we say, well, there's so much more that you could get involved in. Everybody can't become a cultivator. That just won't work. There needs to be dispensaries. There needs to be persons who do transportation of the product. There needs to be persons who process the product into a finished product. So the regulations speak to all of these, as I said. And even if you wanted to have, for example, an event, so you have a license as a consumption space. So this event in the next iteration may decide they want to be a consumption space. The regulations which would speak to a consumption space for 200 people is different to the regulations that would speak to a consumption space for 3,000 people. And we recognize in developing these regulations that they need to be bespoke in each iteration. So that is why you would see so many different licenses and licenses that speak to sub-licenses with the number of persons involved.
So, Dylan, let's get down to the ground. That's actually, you're always supposed to laugh at that. Down to the ground. It's all right. So, Dylan, there are real fears of the foreign ownership of the industry. And it may not be well-founded or not, but that's for your judgment call to make to us. Just like the tourism industry, just like other industries that have been seen as the center of the economic space, how will this industry will not fall prey to some of these same views about foreign ownership of the industry?
So we can't say that it will not fall victim to predators, because we expect that they will exist. What we have put in place is a mechanism to be able to empower the local persons and what we refer to as the legacy operators. So when we look to Jamaica, St. Vincent, Barbados, Antigua, and what happened in these countries, we recognize that there were substantial challenges with the individuals who were part of the industry who wanted to remain within the industry. Make no mistake, cannabis is not a cheap crop to be involved in. The persons who are currently in it know. It takes quite a bit of investment. And if you are cultivating a product which is consistent, so similar to any product that you go to Massey to buy, and you look to the back and you can tell what is in that product, if you bring your product to that standard, it's not cheap. So in recognizing that you didn't want to ostracize the persons who are part of the industry, who may want to become part of that industry when it's legitimate, but may not have the wherewithal financially so to do, we felt that there needed to be a mechanism to capture these persons. So our legislation is the only legislation in the region that speaks to a central trading entity. The CTE, well, there can be a maximum of 2 on island, but the CTE really mandates that any entity who is cultivating cannabis in St. Lucia must either sell that cannabis to the central trading entity or must pay the central trading entity royalties for having cultivated the cannabis in St. Lucia. The interesting thing about our CTE is that you must have an ownership stake of at least 30% St. Lucian, 1. And 2, at least 30 traditional operators must be owners of the CTE. Meaning that if a foreigner comes in tomorrow and says, wow, that's a lovely space to be in, I'd like to be a CTE because I have the financial wherewithal to ensure that if a farmer has 100 pounds of cannabis and he comes into me to sell that, I can pay him. The average St. Lucian company may not be in a position to receive 100 pounds of cannabis from 100 farmers in a given day and be able to pay them for that. So there may be a need for us to lure in investors with deeper pockets. But we wanted to ensure that when these investors came in, they had to have a conversation with the local operators. They had to go to the people who had been part of the industry and say, in order to get this license as a CTE, I need to have 30% of my company owned by St. Lucians. And I need to have at least 30 legacy operators who would have been cultivators before, who would have been jugglers before. What that allows these legacy operators to do is to say, the cost of getting into the industry as a legal player is too much. I may need to have fencing, I may need to have other means of security. That's going to be too expensive for me. But because I received an amnesty, and because my country recognizes me as a legacy operator, the CTE must get 30 like me to buy shares. And when I now own shares in this company, every single plant propagated in St. Lucia, I now get dividends from, even though I'm no longer selling cannabis, even though I'm no longer cultivating. So it took quite some time for us to conceptualize it, and we worked quite a bit with persons like Mr. DeCaries and his team of the THC to conceptualize a central trading entity that we thought would have resulted to the benefit of the local operators, but that is how we sought to ensure that they were protected.
Thank you very much for that. So Dylan, let's also talk about, let's clap for that as well. Dylan, let's talk about, and even then, I mean, through the regulations, by the way, they have also noted employment criteria. So in many of the regulations, and Dylan might have to hire me after that, there's a 40% at times of individuals who must be local as part of the organization.
Citizens, correct.
There must be at times a 50%, a 30% based on the type of license that one is given within the regulations of the cannabis industry. But Dylan, I want to also get from you, how is it that the agency and the wider system will protect smaller farmers who may not have the financial wherewithal to want to become a sort of medium and large-scale enterprise, but are still part and parcel of the ecosystem and have created this thing from the ground up?
So again, that really is where the CTE comes in, because the CTE has the ability, as one of the only two large-scale wholesalers on island, they may be able to have a conversation with your international players and say, we have cannabis to sell. It is a lot more challenging, and the persons who are involved in other products like CMOS would note that. It is a lot more challenging as a farmer to individually reach out to these companies overseas to say, I'm selling CMOS. But when you have a central body, Export St. Lucia, Helen's daughters, who can say, we can access the market, ensure they're receiving a fair price for it, and you only need to come to us and we can get you whatever product you need. So you want cannabis grown in the Fosse Jacques Hills with that potency, this and that, we know all the farmers. They sell to us and we can then export to you. So the farmers don't have to find an export-ready market or somebody who wants to receive their product. They can have that sold to the CTE, who has the umbrella to go to market the cannabis for St. Lucia throughout the world.
Tell us quickly about the preservation of the Rastafari community as part of the regulation process.
So we have religious regulations within the framework for cannabis. And what we sought to do with those regulations was create a space for non-commercial cannabis use. This sacrament is not commercial use of cannabis. When the Rastafarian is cultivating that product, when he's using that product through his meditation, through his sacrament, it is not commercial cannabis. This industry sought to create a regime for commercial cannabis. So we had to carve out an area to allow for them to use their sacrament. But we also thought that it was unfair to say that you're only using this as a sacrament. All of the benefits which would resound to the economic involvement in the plant, you would lose out on. So we said, okay, if you are a religion that is registered, you can either claim yourself as a religious organization under the legislation, and you can also recommend another religious organization to be recognized under the legislation. You may have your own tabernacle that's not registered, but you may have another tabernacle that is registered that can say, we will vouch for this entity and register this tabernacle as a religious organization. And if you are registered as a religious organization, you can also apply for a cultivator's license. So we're not just using the non-commercial cannabis for your sacramental purposes. You can also say, I want to be involved in the commercial space, and as the legislation allows for cultivation licenses, we will also get our cultivation license, also sell to the CTE. If we have a processor's license, we can also keep our product and not sell and buy it back, but keep it, process it, and sell it to a dispensary. So we have the ability to get the revenue that the industry allows for through the cultivation of the product.
We're coming to you after the next question, but tell us quickly about the dispensary.
So our regime is a medicinal cannabis regime. Some persons here may have a headache today or tomorrow. If you have a headache, you then determine that you would like to take medicine for your headache. You go into Massey and you buy a Panadol. You just got medicine for your headache, but you didn't go to a doctor for that prescription. You were able to self-prescribe, acquire, and self-medicate. If it is that you had some other back pain that required a more potent pain reliever, you'd have gone to a doctor and said, listen, I need to be put on something a little stronger than Panadol, it's not helping. The doctor would then say, based on his background and experience in medicine, you should be on codeine, morphine, or whatever other ine. So what we sought to do within this industry was ensure that you had similar treatment for cannabis as a medicine. So there would be class 1 cannabis and class 2 cannabis. The distinction will be set by a council within the legislation referred to as the Medicinal Cannabis Council. The CMO will be part of that council, a number of other players within the space. So the Rastafarian community have individuals, persons with a background in cannabis will serve on that council. And they will advise us to what should be the difference between class 1, which you can access without a prescription, and class 2, which will require a medicinal practitioner to give you a prescription. When that is set, you will then be able to determine if I can go into a class 1 dispensary and acquire a product up to that potency. So let's say, for example, it's put at 18% in the flower. So I would like to consume cannabis flower, 18% and below, I can go to a pharmacy that's class 1 and I can acquire that product. If I want something stronger than 18%, I must go to a doctor, have a conversation. The doctor may say to you, what is your issue? Oh, well, I have anxiety. Well, THC actually doesn't benefit anxiety too much. You should have a balance of THC and CBD. So maybe you want to be prescribed this product because you recognize that at that level, you want a medicinal practitioner to have that conversation with you. Maybe you have an issue with substance-induced psychosis, which is a possibility. When you get into higher potencies, you may want to have a conversation with a medicinal practitioner to say, you have a predisposition in your family to psychosis. Let's do a swab, which is now possible. You can actually swab somebody and say to them, based on your DNA profile, you predisposed to psychosis. You may not want to go into that product. So recognizing it as a medicinal industry and putting the legislation and the framework in place in that regard allows us to put some of these safeguards in place. And that allows for the class 1 dispensaries, which would be similar to your Massey or any place else that you can go to get a Panadol, or your class 2 dispensary, which is a pharmacy where you would go in with your prescription to get that filled.
Thank you very much for that, Dylan. So I will come to you now about with the questions and queries, and yeah, the same rules apply. You ready? Or you?
I'm a little sorry. My concern is, or my thought pattern is, we're talking about the body that is going to purchase from the farmers, like that main body, like you said, like in St. Lucia. What comes to mind is, the exchange. Are we going to be fair? Like, okay, we take it from them for 2 cents and we sell it for $5 or $50. What are we looking at? Are we considering? Can we trust the body to be as fair as possible where the transaction is concerned?
So that is the hope, but we do have a fail-safe within the legislation where the minister can set pricing. So we are hoping not to. We're hoping that the market forces will allow for a fair treatment of the individuals, but if it is recognized that it is not happening, the minister does have the discretion to step in to set prices.
Hey, good afternoon, Dylan. Dylan is my hero. He's been working hard on this for 5 years with Vernie Manuel and Trisha Inglis, and amazing. Thank you for all your hard work. I want to let everybody know that, yeah, Dylan, you deserve applause. We signed on to drug law treaties back in the early 70s, and as a result, we have a INCB, which is the International Narcotics Control Board. So a lot of the things that I anticipated would happen in a legalized regime may not actually happen. I think that the regulations are onerous, and we may find that people who have been plying a trade in cannabis for decades may get pushed out. I know Dylan tried his utmost best to make sure that these people don't lose their job in cannabis. So my question to you is, the guys on the block, we've had this discussion before just for the benefit of the people. The guys on the block, the guys with the malls, could they qualify as a dispensary And what sort of regulations do they have to come up with to actually qualify as a dispenser? Because in the ganja culture, I'm a daily ganja smoker for almost 50 years, so I know where to buy the weed. And many of the places that you buy weed from will not qualify as dispensaries. And these people would be put out of business. And these people feed their families, pay their bills, and have been doing that for decades on ganja money. So what happens to these guys? Do we get a time period where these guys could reach up to the regulatory standards?
So again, thanks for that question. We've had this discussion at length. We are going through, similar to the process we went through for the legislation, we are going through a process of the revision of the regulations. So we've published about 12 or 13 of these regulations, and they are available on our website for public view and comment. We'll be hosting over the next 2 weeks stakeholder and community engagements on these regulations. So the individuals who have these concerns, and we may not be able to augment or alter the regulations to allow for all of them to enter the space, but this is their opportunity to say, I have a challenge. Way too often, we let the eyes have it before we understand what the eyes have. Legislation is going to be going to Parliament. You have an authority in the RSC that is saying, here's the legislation. Read it. Tell me what is too onerous. Tell me what you have a challenge with. We are not getting sufficient comments from the persons who are saying to us they want to be part of the regime. So what will happen is we will go with industry best practice. We will develop regulations, have them as part of the legislative regime, and then people will stay in the corners and say, these guys did. It's not these guys. We are asking, please be part. Please read it. If you want to be a cultivator, you ought to be reading the cultivation regulations and sending in a comment saying, a 10-foot fence is too high. Now, we may not be able to change it to an 8-foot fence, but at least we have these things in the back of our minds when we're looking at the development of the regulations. So that's one, speaking to them getting a voice at this stage. Two, everybody within the space will not be able to migrate into the legitimate market. We recognize that. And that is why we put in place things like the CTE, so they still would have a means of generating income from the cannabis industry. But it is also a conversation to be had about coming together. It may have been okay when you, for the last few years, would have been involved in the cannabis space on your own. If we are seeking to compete with some of the individuals, because St. Lucia is competing with Canada, with countries in Europe, and with smaller Caribbean states like ourselves in St. Vincent, Barbados. You really think it is fair for this dispenser who has had a plastic box walking around to be able to compete with a dispensary in Antigua? The product we're trying to build here has to be able to compete on an international level. So we're not saying we don't want that person to be part of the regime. We're saying that person has to venerate his product to a standard where we can all be proud that that is what a St. Lucian dispensary looks like. So when you legalize the industry, he can now go to our friends at Library Credit Union, to Bank of St. Lucia, to Sagicor Finance, or wherever else he wants to go to and say, I am now a legitimate business person. I apply this trade where I cultivate cannabis. I have a license to be involved in it. I would like to get funding from you based on the fact that I'm licensed in this space. And that's what we really hope to have happen. Not that they come to argue to keep a plastic box on Barron's Drive, but that he says to the bank, this is my business plan. This is how much money I have made off of cannabis. Because we know they feed their families. We know that there's more US at Barron's Drive than in Bank of St. Lucia. Do you know that that's where the tourists are going? But if they also recognize that they have more US in their pocket and they have a business plan to show how much they're putting in and taking out of the business, can't they go to a bank and say, this is what I'm doing, if we legalize the regime and make them a regular farmer? And that's our hope, that they can bring themselves up to that level.
Thank you very much for that, Dylan. And while you're applauding, I want you to also extend that applause to Pancho, who's been in the fight for a very, very long time and who doesn't get the requisite praise that he deserves. Going to you now.
Thank you. You did mention the legacy, what was the term, for persons who've been in?
The legacy operators.
All right. Is this something that's going to be generational? So, for example, if it's given to the father, can it be something that's passed down?
As of now, no. it was envisaged as something that would have been given to the individual themselves, that you would have been a legacy operator. But again, that is now part of a regime that is still not yet passed.
Okay, fair enough.
So I'm not saying that it will be changed, but I'm saying if that is a concern, let us see it. So if it is that we are to present to the Cabinet of Ministers or to Parliament why we took this stance, we can say we received considerable pressure from the population saying they wanted that.
And the other thing from me is, you did mention the medical prescriptions for class 2. Are there any legal implications if I decide, hey, listen, I really do not want, I do not need the, hey, this is for anxiety. I would rather go just have the cannabis and allow my beautiful brain to decide, you know, what my high should be. Are there any legal implications for that?
So currently, you are allowed to cultivate 4 plants in your household. So that is the status quo. And you are also permitted to have 30 grams on your person. That is the status quo. So this legislation is not seeking to change that. So if it is that you believe that you can cultivate the best possible cannabis for yourself, and it's again non-commercial, and you have your 4 plants, then these are non-commercial activities. Beyond your 4 plants, you're looking into a commercial space, or at least based on our regulations, we believe you are looking into a commercial space. But for your 4 plants, we don't know what the potency is. You just simply inform the RSA, by way of notice, I have 4 plants. And the reason you're informing the RSA is if tomorrow the police come to your home and they see that you have 2 pounds of cannabis, which you can get from 4 plants, you can now say, check the RSA on this date, I gave them notice I had 4 plants, that's why I have 2 pounds of cannabis. Because we recognize that having 30 grams legal and 4 plants legal, there's a disconnect because you will get a lot more than 30 grams from the 4 plants. So we've been thinking about it. We've been putting as much as we can into the legislation. And again, if it is that you want to be able to use your cannabis product within your 4 plants, you're permitted so to do.
Hi, everybody. I think when it comes to cannabis, it has a lot to do with our culture and how people view cannabis. A lot of people think, when they think of cannabis, they think of the guy sitting on the block smoking weed. And I've had 2 medical incidents where cannabis helped with both. I boxed for St. Lucia for a number of years, and when I was done, my hands, I was in so much pain I couldn't sleep. And cannabis helped me from then till now. I do not smoke cannabis, but I consume cannabis. If I have to go to the airport and there is a dog sniffing, I don't think that I'm going to get through. But it helps. I do not have an issue with sleeping. I do not have an issue with arthritis or anything of that sort. But what happened was that my grandparents and the older folk, when they came to my home and they saw that I had the cannabis planted, they automatically thought that I'm a drug dealer. So it has to do with our culture and how we think of cannabis. Now, I have one question for you when it comes to the 4 plants. Per venture, we have, if you have 3 households in the 1 yard, I would say, 1 household is supposed to have 4 plants. What if you come to the yard and there are 4 houses and we have a number of plants? Is there a space? Is there supposed to be a set space where the 4 plants are, or whatever it is? Sorry.
So
you're getting creative.
Thanks for that question. Keep in mind that one of the very important tenets of the cannabis industry that we're trying to put in place is safeguards for young persons. So premise your cultivation of the cannabis with whether it's accessible to a young person. So for us, although you are allowed to cultivate 4 plants, it should not be out in the open. So it should be in such a space that it is not accessible. And if you are separating it in that regard, then each household technically would have had their own little area where they would have cultivated their cannabis. So yes, it's on one piece of land, so to speak, but it is still a household. And as a household, you should have had a cordoned off area where your cannabis would have been cultivated. Because you don't want kids to be able to access the product.
Okay, good afternoon. So earlier you mentioned that, for example, if someone wants paracetamol, they go to the mass store and buy 1 tablet, and that may suffice for the headache. And for a bigger person, they might take 2, because 500 times 2 is 1,000, so that would suffice for someone with a more intense headache. My question is, what do we have in place to quantify the amount of psychoactive material or substance within the cannabis that we have here? Because I'm assuming that if John grows his own under, I don't know, greenhouse, and I maybe grow my own somewhere else, or whatever reason, the quantities may differ. What do we have to regulate or to know how much is in mine as opposed to John's own? And so if a teaspoon of mine would work for my headache or for whatever, would a teaspoon of John's own be as effective as mine?
So our regime has built into it a rigorous testing protocol. So every finished product, just like you can look to the back of the panel and see how much is in it, any cannabis product that you purchase from a Class 1 dispensary would be a finished product. And the finished product would specify, in the case of an edible, for example, 5 milligrams of THC, 2 milligrams of CBD, that is going to be on the product. So you are in a position to make the informed decision. If it is prescribed to you, you would then know that I've been prescribed that potency, and the pharmacist would be responsible for dispensing that in accordance with the prescription.
Thank you very much. So, wait, are you not interested in the industry? Everybody that talk, you'll have 10 questions, long line. We have space for one more question. Yes, Kareem.
Hey, Dylan. Quick question on an industry level. I heard what you said about mechanisms to prevent foreigners coming in or investors coming in. But oftentimes, St. Lucia's, the reality is that we tend to stay within the producer level or the level that requires the least amount of regulation. So I just want to know, what were the conversations like thinking about that and thinking about how do we actually benefit from the industry? Because even with our exporting and stuff like that, we only stay at the producer level, at the raw level, and we don't move up or we don't do agro-processing or these sort of things. So my concern is whether we just become the farmers of cannabis, and that's where we stay at, from an industry perspective.
As a regulator, we can play the music, but we can't force you to dance. So we cannot come into this space and say that more people have to do dispensaries, or we need to have more producers. That really isn't something that we can do as regulators within the space. We can put in place the facilitating mechanism by way of inclusive legislation and regulations, and try to make it as appetizing as possible for these persons to get into these various roles within the cannabis space. But we cannot mandate that. And we do recognize that you want as much as possible to allow foreign investors to come in, but for them to partner with your local person so that the benefit financially resounds not just to them, but to the other players. But again, there must be some interest by us. There must be some want for us to be part of it, because we've developed the regulations to facilitate you being part of any of the activities within the space. And if it is that no one wants to get into the seeds, and everybody thinks that I'm going to cultivate cannabis and buy seeds, then there's going to be some foreigner who will recognize that gap in the industry and come in to sell the seeds. We will not then say, well, no, you're a foreigner, so you can't sell the seeds, and leave the entire market without the seeds. So we're hoping somebody in this space will say, I can do the seeds. Somebody in this space will say, oh, I can allow for packaging. You don't have to package it yourself if it's too expensive. I can go with economies of scale and in mass buy packages and put your brand on it. We're hoping and we're trying to facilitate that as much as possible. So it really comes down to you at the end of the day to take those opportunities.
Dylan, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Mr. Dylan Norbert Inglis. Please, 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 I'm begging all you, go to the RSA website, leave your comments, leave your feedbacks, because Dylan said it better than anybody else. Too many times we allow the eyes to have it without knowing what exactly the eyes have. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your patience and your understanding. It's been a pleasure. Maureen?
That was a beautiful, beautiful very well enlightening. For a very long time I was saying, well, what happening with the thing? Me, I hearing nothing. Dylan just put me sit down with my little tail between it. I say, okay, yeah, all right. We may have been late, but we are properly dressed. And I think that's a good place to be. Let's give it up for Dylan one more time. Thank you very much.